Good morning, you beautiful SMITE fans, and welcome in to a wonderful Friday where the SPL shall now continue. And to do that from the desk with me today is going to be none other than the one, the only, the best Taco. How you doing?
I'm really excited. I mean, we had some great, fantastic SPL action yesterday. So good that I had to say two adjectives at the same time.
Well, there you go. Let's have a look, though, at how the standings look coming into today. We did have action yesterday, as Taco mentioned. Rival still top of the shop. Obviously, these records are through the whole year, but we're in phase 2 at the moment. LG at 1-11, Rival at 10-1, so a bit of a change up there. Top 5, well, it's not all easy as that. I think it's all the way down to potentially like 7. They're in the running to make the top end here so far, especially with us only being in week 4. And we can also take a little look at the schedule. Yesterday, we got a chance to see Obey take on Space Station. Obey coming up 3-1 there. And LG with a very interesting matchup against SK Gaming. Unfortunately, though, SK did come out on top.
And even though Luminosity might have fallen against SK yesterday, I think that we saw enough potential still with this team for me to believe that it's realistic for them to possibly take a game, if not more, off of the Renegades if they're not careful.
And talking more about the Renegades now as well. Renegades are probably the favourites coming into, well, this week, the next week, and a few more weeks if they keep going the way they have been. A lot of confidence on this team these days, especially with their performances through Phase 1, which were, well, not as well as they would have liked, but it started to culminate at MSI, where this team really came together.
The more they play, the better they seem to get every single time, and I have to believe that a large portion of that can be credited to Dardez. This mid lane has just been so hard to gauge that it's made it really difficult for any teams to really understand what to expect or how to even play against what Dardez presents.
Well, before this match, we had a chance to catch up with Dardez and see how he's feeling about this year. Let's have a listen in.
We were like excited because we've been waiting for like 3 months, I think. We came like after 3 months of like SPL, so we were excited to play, and it was rough like playing every games in 2 months, I think, or 1 month, 1.5 months. But yeah, I guess it worked out because we won MSI at the end, so yeah. Well, we figured out that I was playing Hunters mid, and Funballer like would love to play his mages in ADC. And it will work in streams and yeah. And iRaffer on the Cherryo and Gab, and I guess like as soon as we figured out that comp, like we literally win every game. It feels insane because I feel like I can never die. Like when he's on Cherryo or Gab, like I'm literally free casting, and I know I won't die. Like I don't have to use my Aegis. Like I know like Cherryo is gonna come on me. I don't have to worry about anything. The new meta in mid is like playing Hunters. So Snoopy used to play Hunters, so he's gonna play Hunters in mid, I think, or maybe Vulcan, maybe. But yeah, he's definitely a good player. It's gonna be a good matchup in mid, I think. Well, I think we're just gonna play our own game, but yeah, they're definitely I think they're definitely a better team on paper. Even though like it's a start, like they don't have to like get used to like the new team and etc. But I think they are better players now, and it's gonna be a tough match, I think.
Well, Dardez thinks it may be a tough matchup here today, but at the same time, got a little bit of insight on how he feels about being on this squad and in that mid lane position. A lot of confidence and trust in each other is the main focal point that this team keeps telling us about.
It's the trust that really, I think, seals the deal here for Renegades and being such a convincing team in a lot of their wins. And Dardez said it himself. Anytime I see iRaffer on the Cherryo or the Geb, I just all-in commit. He has no reason to hesitate, and I think that's also part of the reason why it's so hard to predict what the Renegades are going to do next, because Dardez really is such a wild card.
Well, you talk about predictions, and Luminosity Gaming with quite a couple of roster changes this year. I'm excited to see, well, second phase I should say, excited to see how they do. A lot of people starting to talk positive vibes about this team now. They seem to be slowly coming together. And you heard Dardez talk about that man on your screen there, Snoopy, about he plays Hunters, he may play the Vulcan a little bit, but they're respectful of what he can bring.
And this is still technically the honeymoon phase for Luminosity off of those roster switch-ups, and Snoopy has been a big focal point for a lot of teams that have played against Luminosity so far, and understandably so. We all knew that he was going to be considered a premier player joining this team, and yet at the same time, it's still incredible what he's been able to accomplish through the mid lane, and I'm really excited to see how this specific matchup against Dardez is going to shape up, because they do kind of have a similar playstyle.
Definitely a little bit worried Taco coming to today, because this is a look back at what happened with SK Gaming a little bit yesterday. Obviously, SK Gaming is probably a team that LG could look to try and take on. They'd feel a little bit more likely to find a win other than against Renegades. So Renegades going to be an even bigger test than this SK squad. What do they need to correct from yesterday, do you feel?
The main issue that Luminosity seemed to have was just playing around those Phoenixes. I think that they had a lot of trouble just getting in for the siege at times, and it just felt like there was a little bit of a miscommunication that led to poor coordination, because we oftentimes saw Xaliea or Lasbra just going a little bit too deep into that Phoenix territory, and so the team fight would just be a little bit too split.
It wasn't related to composition at all. It was mainly just to execution?
It was partially composition,
okay.
I think. A little bit of both for sure, but it definitely does come back to the composition for sure when you don't have a really consistent way to try and breach that back line every single time, and also be able to have someone that can consistently tank up those Phoenix shots.
Well, LG are going to be first pick, first ban this time round as we get into picks and bans. We'll see what they choose to do up against the Renegades here. As we said, they did lose to SK yesterday, so I think this will give us a really good understanding of where LG are going to be at this year. They've taken on SK, which are a mid to lower end team right now, but they still didn't find the win there. Now Renegades, well, still around the top of the shop, still favourites with how MSI went, even though the standings say otherwise.
Well, Khepri going to be looked at first by Luminosity, not trying to let iRaffer give his carries any sort of second chances. Wouldn't be surprised to see Kronos or a set. Horus as well has been a really popular pick for Luminosity, especially after Eonic yesterday looked rather good on that one.
Jingwei going to be banned away early on here from Joshy, just to make sure that LG don't have that opportunity available for him. Jingwei, one of the safer gods in the dual lane. Even if you're against mages, you can still farm up and maybe make some rotational impacts. And talking about rotational impacts a little bit, Taco, we start to see that a lot more out of these side lanes. I'm noticing a much quicker pace towards getting to the fights in mid.
And not too surprising that either of these teams would have their dual lanes become a little bit more involved. They're just such aggressive hunter players in general. Funballer and Joshy, I mean, we've had all this focus on the mid lane, and yet Funballer has been collecting player tags off cooldown in that dual lane, and Joshy, well, he's been just trying to shine. He's gotten a couple of solo kills that have looked really solid, gotten soloed a couple of times as well, so he's not scared to be aggressive, though.
That's true, and LG actually going to ban one of the Zhong, someone that, well, Funballer really brought to the scene once more. Do you look to maybe ban away the Kronos from him as well, just in case, or look to... Oh, there we go. You said it for me.
They're not going to give it a second chance.
Yeah.
Luminosity, take out the Khepri, take out the Kronos, a lot of very specific bans against players of Renegades, which is what tends to be the reoccurring theme for a lot of teams once they're in competitive.
Well, we saw a lot of first pick Geb yesterday, and I know LG also did that, so they may go back to it again, especially because that man on your screen, iRaffer, is very well known for making the Geb look very strong, but instead, Luminosity going to give the game away of the Merlin pick here. Still a little bit flexible. We've seen it run in the duo lane, not just the mid.
This is exactly what Luminosity did, not in their most previous set, but prior to that, up against United, they just kept favoriting this Merlin for Snoopy in that mid lane. Renegade's got to pick up the Muzen Cobb and the Geb.
I saw that one
it's
coming.
Traditional iRaffer play so far in Phase 2 here, and not only that, but I love the survivability aspect this Geb is going to be able to provide for this Muzen Cobb, and the AMC in general, whether it's in duo or in mid, going to have steady clear.
LG going to take away the Horus for themselves here to try and answer back the supportive nature of that Geb. But LG seem to know that's going on, because if we can read the situation, the Renegades are going to go Geb there. LG knew this was going to be the case when they selected Merlin. So we'll see what they've got to handle it. And Cabrakan can be pretty useful at forcing that shield to be used relatively early on in fights.
I love this Cabrakan response from Luminosity, especially if it's intended for Lasbra in the jungle one more time. Got plenty of hybrid possibilities as well, can go a little bit more defensive if necessary, and that Thoth being locked in from Renegades, a little bit of a risk versus reward situation in my eyes, Hindu, because this Cabrakan so far can sufficiently cut off all three of these Renegades picks with that ultimate.
That's a good point as well. Yeah, very pinned down in opportune moments there with those walls coming down from Cabrakan. And now we've seen Thoth and both AMC both flex to the mid and the dual position, so Renegades have a little bit of flexibility there. Funballer has shown he's quite happy to play the mages in that lane through the years as well. We've seen the Yarnises and the likes as well.
Well, Renegades aren't doing anything different. They are just running exactly what's been winning them games from the start of this Phase 2, and I don't blame them them because it's up to Luminosity to try and force them to do something different.
Olorun banned away by Renegades just in case LG look in that direction. If they would have gone with the Olorun, though, they would have been double magical. However, Olorun does have crit, so technically he's an in-hand hunter to an extent too. Dardez taken away, one of Cherryo's go-to gods throughout the year when he's available in the right situation. Not sure how useful she would really have been here. Maybe good against the Cabrakan, I guess.
Dardez probably would have been a better pickup for Luminosity than a ban, honestly, but Lasbra probably going to be representing that Cabrakan unless it's a Cabrakan for Xaliea that is a fairly interchangeable pick with this Luminosity roster. As for the Renegades, though, can't say I'm surprised to see them ban away the Jormungandr. Xaliea has had top-tier performances on this, and the King Arthur strip away from Luminosity is also something I was expecting to see, but Osiris maybe being a possibility now for Renegades, or even the Bologna.
Looks like Renegades may actually keep the solo lane pick for themselves in this opportunity. Now they could just hold that solo lane pick, see what Xaliea goes with. And that's why they're going to select Thor here, which is, once again, he can be multi-rolled to an extent, but more than likely in the jungle here for Cherryo.
Thor also, though, going to have to deal with a fair bit of interrupt between that Horus and Cabrakan, and now with the Vamana, it's booed. It's going to be difficult for this Thor to find consistent escapes or initiations.
It's a very heavy dive squad from LG so far, though. Both Cabrakan, Vamana, Horus all want to get into the melee range with the characters they're up against. And in doing so, it may leave the backline a little bit vulnerable here, so they're going to have to focus on self-peel.
Possibly, but right now for Luminosity, all I'm seeing is a bunch of early game potential.
That's
and
true.
A tendency or a possibility to take over the mid game and close this one out before Renegades have a chance to get these late game carries online, because Geb, Thoth, even the AMC up to a certain extent is going to need a little bit of farm time, but with Luminosity having so much dive early on and a lot of early game aggression, it's going to be tough for Renegades to survive.
And funny enough, I think you're right there, because the way Renegades have played this shit, it's been around the mid game. Once again, look at an old, almost energy style play from iRaffer to an extent. Is this 16 to 20 minute mark is where Renegades go, okay, and now we fight and we don't let up the steam. But we'll see if LG then can, in this early game, get a lead at the start and try and push it into that mid game.
A little bit scary, though, seeing that Athena I think
Thor.
that Athena is going to be fantastic alongside of this Thor, because while Luminosity have a ton of dive potential, they don't necessarily have a whole lot of peel for this Merlin or the Chernobog. I think that they're just relying on trying to get off to a good early game start.
I'm looking at the Athenas to be the solo laner here. Is that the right call? Because I know Cherryo can do it too, right, in the jungle.
I think it's fair to... but then again, I think
He's got a better matchup
that
against
Thor
Vamana.
could also be there. And Thor is great, I think, at cutting off the Vamana.
That's true.
So,
I mean, he's good at cutting off the Vamana, and I guess he can escape a little bit better against the Cabrakan gang.
also going to have a little bit more possibility to get those solo to mid lane rotations to try and shut down this Merlin.
Coming into this one, everyone probably expects Renegades to win this, but does LG have a shot in this first game with how they've drafted?
I think that if Luminosity is able to take over, they can.
Well, here we go. Game one, ready to go. LG versus Renegades. It's John Finch and Anatoly.
Thanks, Hindu Man. Thanks, Taco. You heard it from her on the desk. If LG can take over, then maybe they can win, but I don't know. It's not going to be an easy early game for them as Nika takes the Thor into the short lane, actually. I was expecting this to be in the jungle, but Cherryo and Athena, I mean, name a more iconic duo.
It wouldn't be Renegades if they didn't do something off the wall a little bit. And I love this for Nika, to be able to be aggressive in the soul lane, because Xaliea is one that you can't really give him any freedom to rotate. He's been playing a lot of Guardians recently with the Jormungandrs, a little bit of Chaac here and there. Not too much for mana, but this is a god that you have to respect in the late game. And utilizing that Thor passive in the 2v2 scuffles to get extra physical power could help out also Cherryo.
Well, Eonic is doing what we see supports do so much now, trying to stalk this jungler and harass Cherryo, but there's a lot of members nearby. He takes some early damage. Instead, now he's just with a iRaffer, and it looks like they've kind of given up on making sure they secure this. Cherryo instead just in the middle lane with Dardez pushing.
As in a Muzen Cup should, honestly. There's no way you're going to outpush the Muzen Cup. Utilizing the shield wall to group up all 6 minions. Eonic looking for poke, but it's not going to amount to much at all. With Renegades clearing the mid wave now, can easily fan out to any direction they want. I don't see Eonic's gank, or invade rather, to be successful.
He's just going to chase them down anyway. Doesn't get there in time, as you predicted, to try and slow them down. But that was the blink consumed from Eonic as well, to get to the middle lane fast enough to try and harass Dardez. and at least force what appears to be a potion usage out of him at the very least. But for the most part, you're right. I mean, he hasn't gained a ton. It's basically just been that he's split this mid-wave so far.
Small, subtle things, the way Renegades have been opening up the map like this is why they've been so successful at the second half of Phase 1. The ability to go undefeated in Mid-Season Invitational, to continue that streak, to win against Splice last week at 3-1. Just by sticking also the Athena into the mid lane. Like, most teams don't do this kind of start at all, Finch, but Renegades have tried so many different things inside their scrims, and we're seeing the success of it now on the battleground.
The only question is Cherryo going to miss out on that speed buff at iRaffer that ended up with it in the end, since obviously Cherryo had to come to the middle lane to kind of pull Eonic away. Eonic, though, has now been slowed, stuck inside the shield wall. Dardez and iRaffer on the way, and Eonic doesn't have really any backup on the way to this, so now he's in some trouble. Is able to waste a good deal of time. Shockwave will land, now Cherryo gets closer. Nika should be able to clean this up, but the knockup comes through, and there's first blood for Renegades.
And going to the Thor as well. Nika should be able to get a decent amount of an advantage here by backing before Xaliea and getting those warrior tabis for the extra physical power to be able to control the Totem of Coups. Goes a long way, not only for Nika, but also the rest of his team.
That is the risk that is run nowadays with this start for the supports and them trying to kind of harass the junglers and kind of roaming around the map, is that you can end up getting isolated like that. And so often you can fall so far behind from it too, from just one small positioning mistake or one quick rotation from the other team to collapse on you. It's really treacherous waters to try and navigate.
It is, Finch, but we've seen so many supports sacrifice their early lead, or early start rather, anyway, to try to harass the jungler. And unfortunately for Eonic, it hasn't been fruitful. Cherryo is still on the same experience pathing as Lasbra, now getting his second speed buff. So Eonic should still be fine at the end of the day. Who's really going to be suffering is Xaliea, because of Nika's advantage with the first blood, with the extra experience, and also less stacks on the Warrior's blessings. So Nika, with the extra protections, could be a little bit more aggressive and not have to worry about Lasbra's rotations.
That's right, Warrior Tabi already finished now for Nika, which means he's got a pretty decent power spike if they were to fight. And Xaliea didn't go the teleport early on. He has Blink in this matchup, which is nice if he's rotating, but it's going to make it way harder when he gets forced out of lane.
Normally when you go Blink at level 1 in the solo lane, there's some sort of advantage that you can get that can catch the opponent off guard. I'm thinking of Hercules, I'm thinking of Tier, where you can actually push them under the tower. But as a Vamana, blinking in for a little bit of poke damage potentially, like, the only real way is if you're literally under your tower, the enemy is hugging your tower line, and they're moving forward, and then you blink knock them up into your tower line, which is a very rare instance.
Yes, it's not a lot of outs that he's playing to, but it looks like Luminosity are playing towards a strong out. Funballer being 3-man ganked, does have the beads, as in comes Joshy with the ultimate. Funballer saves the evade and punish, but the dive potential will be too strong. Eonic finds the first kill for LG.
Joshy able to cut off the escape path coming through. Nowhere for Funballer to go. Similar story to how LG actually ganked out Zatman in the yesterday's match when he was playing the Olorun. He was very safe, very next to his tower. Even a Thoth that was able to evade and punish through that wall. Still not safe against the double blink and the global pressure.
I just don't know how much longer this type of thing is going to work for LG, and I mean long-term, Tully. We already heard Sam for Soccer say yesterday that part of Lasbra's identity is that he likes to gank duo. He spends a lot of time on the left side of the map. So it's clear already that other teams are picking up on that tendency for him. If they are too reliant on this, teams will just start rotating and being there to punish.
I mean, even with this kill, Finch, or rather, even with the death from Funballer, he still has this one-level lead because of how much splitting LG has done in that duo lane. Triple splitting a wave, never a fun thing for especially a hunter. Like, we hear mid laners always complain about triple sharing because the Guardian is there, the jungler is there, but what if those two extra players are in the long lane? I don't think that Joshy is thrilled about that one.
No, not particularly, as iRaffer takes a little bit of damage, but nothing worth writing home about. That is the Renegades who maintain control of those oracles. And just kind of speaking of, of LG long-term, they have clearly improved from where they were in Phase 1. I think that there's no doubt about that. But to what degree they have improved is still yet to be determined. That SK set yesterday was really telling that LG came out looking good, but SK were able to adapt to them rather quickly. this LG squad's going to have to show us they have a little bit more than what we've seen so far in the tank.
Well, in Phase 2, they did beat out Eonic in a 5-game set, and that's their only set victory thus far. Needing to find one against Renegades, a tough task. If they can win against Renegades, though, that's definitely a telling sign that they are here to play, because Renegades are just looking so strong, and they haven't let go of the gas since winning MSI.
Yeah, if LG can figure out how to beat Renegades, they'll get some calls from the other teams, because everyone else is still struggling on that one. So I wouldn't hold anything against them if they were to end up dropping this set, but we're still early days. There is a grouping around mid-Harpies. Eonic blinks in, and that does force Dardez into the beads early on. Now they've isolated Dardez away from the rest of the group, and that is a nice pick there for Joshy. Dardez falls.
4 players on top of one, yet again splitting a lot there from the left camps, but this is what LG are good at. This is what LG are really solid about doing. Cherryo able to at least strip away the speed buff. Will trade out his own ultimate for Eonic. That's fair in the likes of Renegade's favor.
Yeah, that's huge for Renegades, really. They were able to respond to that kill into Dardez, which on its own is not that strong for LG, and strip away the speed from Lasbra and get out cleanly. I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty good there for Renegades overall.
And honestly, this is the point where LG need to try to exploit Renegades when they're not grouped up as 5, when Dardez is alone, when Funballer's still looking to farm in this long lane, because those opportunities are very far and few between. I'm expecting Renegades to really start dominating once it's the late game and the team fights do group up. Double Guardians such as Athena and Geb are so safe, or can even be as aggressive as they are safe. So it's up to LG to prevent that late game from even occurring. There is a ticking time bomb for LG to worry about, and that's probably after the 28-minute mark.
I would say so. Geb Athena is so difficult to deal with. And how do you predict we're going to be seeing Nika build at that point, too? I mean, with 2 Guardians on the team, he doesn't have to be particularly tanky. Do you think we might see closer to a jungle Thor build from him over there?
I don't think so, honestly. We're still probably going to see Pre-win out of him. Obviously, you want that 20% cooldown reduction. Once you play cleanup crew, you want that extra shield to be able to dive further, get that extra slow factor. I want to see at least 1 penetration item from him for sure. Probably going to be the Crusher to amplify those abilities even further. And probably something to absorb even more damage and to cap off the CDR. I'm thinking either Spirit's Robe or Mantle of Discord.
A lot of options there for Nika. We'll see how that build path develops. Cherryo early on signaling, you know, at least some bruiser. Stone of Binding is something you might build even if you were to support Athena and the cooldown boots. So still not quite sure where he's going, but he's here for the speed buff spawn yet again. Cherryo relentless in this invade pressure, but Snoopy and Eonic, or at the very least Snoopy, seem to know this is going on, so LG will be here for the defense.
iRaffer there as well. It is going to be a 3-on-2 if LG want to engage this, but instead, Cherryo tries to go for the invade, gets the 2 smalls, but the Blizzard out of Snoopy confirms the big Harpy.
And speed reclaimed by Lasbra. I'm sure he's happy they were able to get back on top of that buff timer. And that just goes to show how strong Renegades are, man. They were able to rotate down there and be there for the speed buff one more time. Fortunately, LG were aware and there to stop it too.
You know that whole saying, if you're on time, you're late?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what was being shown by Cherryo. He was there about maybe 5 seconds earlier than the speed buff was there, because if he was on time, he would have ran into a brick wall and he would have been late.
Yeah, fortunately. Got there a little bit too soon. Renegades defending their own red here at this point. Totally, we talked a little bit about where we'd expect Nika to be going there with his build path, but what about Cherryo? He's going to have to toe that line a little bit too, because Athena could definitely output some damage, but it's going to be at the front, so you want her beefy. Nika in some trouble, but does make it up into the air. Should be out now that the Anvil of Dawn is challenged.
Surprised Lasbra didn't use his ultimate, trying to get off more damage. Tremor's not as much burst damage. I don't think Nika would have died either way, so at least holding on to it for another time, as we're seeing more pressure onto Cherryo. Speed buff not due to respawn for another minute, and you asked me the build for Cherryo. I'm thinking typical cost-effective build. After Stone of Binding, normally Guardians will go into the Dynasty Plate Helmet, looking for the extra penetration, because that shield wall, if you can confirm the second hit with the long duration of the taunt, you definitely could, but it looks like he's building into the Relic Dagger now, trying to get 40 seconds off of his blink.
That's right, Relic Dagger feels really good on just about anyone who's doing a hybrid build nowadays. The health, movement, speed, CDR, and obviously the synergy with your relics are all pretty nuts. So I got no problem with that item being built here, as the pace has been a bit slow. Cherryo has been aggressive in the jungle, but not for picks. it's been about stealing away the farm and knowing that he has that escape tool in that Defender of Olympus if it comes to it. But in terms of picks, we haven't seen a whole lot.
No, definitely not a lot of picks. It's still the farming game right now, although iRaffer caught in a little bit of an awkward position, forced to use the Cataclysm. And we're talking about the farming, as he's been able to not only finish off the Gauntlet of Thebes before Eonic, but also start stacking it up. Already sitting at 9 stacks, whereas Eonic just now backing to finish that item.
iRaffer will be out in front in that department. I wonder if some of this slower pace or just kill pace is due to just how tanky these two teams are, right? I mean, it's Vamana, Cabrakan, Horus, and then on the other side, it's Athena, Geb, and even a Thor who's building somewhat tanky on that right-hand side, so no surprise as Renegades are finally ready to step on the gas, but Final Judgment off the mark, so Lasbra is able to buy some time. Joshy comes in, following up on Eonic, who then takes down Cherryo as well, a 2-for-1 for LG, off a slight bit of miscommunication.
Even though they did get the kill, without the Final Judgment connecting, it took longer than expected out of Renegades, giving time for LG to react. The damage coming through from Snoopy's, especially him having red buff now, was too much to handle. Between the Blizzard, between the Fire Stance abilities, but it doesn't seem like LG want to stop.
It does not. They're going to push Funballer away from the purple buff. If he's smart with his evade and punish, there's not much chance he'll die here, and he does reposition back to underneath the tier 2. But man, that just goes to show how narrow sometimes these windows are, because that was a really good initiation for Renegades, but if you're just a bit off the mark with something as important as a Final Judgment, then you can lose the fight.
And honestly, killing a level 9 Cabrakan with that kind of investment, being a little bit close to LG's side of the map, a little bit overzealous, I would say, from Renegades. This isn't the point where they want to force team fights. They want to still continue to farm, get Funballer a couple of more items. Even though he does a decent amount of damage now, Joshy's rotations, this is what LG have been leaning on, is the team fighting cleanup coming through from Joshy on the Living Nightmare Ultimate.
Well, speaking of Joshy, are you surprised all he's going for the fail knot? It's into an Athena with block stacks, a Geb who's defensive against crit anyway. I mean, sure, he'll blow up Dardez and Funball if he can get to them, but I just don't know how helpful it'll be at chewing through this front line.
I just think that the base stats are good enough.
It's just that good.
Yes, it's really solid. So even though you're probably not going to build a secondary critical strike item with the fail knot, just a 20% CDR with the 25% crit chance is a good enough of a base to roll with throughout the entirety of the game.
Pretty good point, man. That just goes to show how strong that item is right now. And I think it's because it just gives everything a hunter could want in one nice package, plus the CDR they don't normally get. So I'm with you totally. As long as we don't see too much more crit from Joshy, I think it can work.
Yeah, he definitely needs to start building into the penetration sooner rather than later. Lacking a little bit of penetration is Funballer now, going for more of a book-esque style build.
Nerd.
Nope. You're such a bully, Finch.
I actually can be. You're not wrong. As Snoopy's in some trouble under the tier 1 in mid. Even with the flicker, though, he's been chased down. Cherryo finds the kill credit, but Xaliea and Eonic are on their way. At the very least, Nika will pay his life in trade. It's 1-for-1.
A nice, interesting idea for Nika
Dardez
to dive, but he was between the tier 1 and tier 2. Now Dardez in a little bit of trouble. Aga's going to buy him a moment, but sacrifices his jungler instead.
Cherryo comes in with that safety, instinctual nature that he has and trades his life away. And I don't know who's more valuable there between Dardez and Cherryo, but you definitely want your jungler to be farming.
Finch, I'm looking at a very big strength from LG, and that strength is Joshy on this Chernobog. This is what led them to their one victory against SK yesterday.
Right.
And it seems to give them a good enough control, but they're not really winning in the gold department despite having the kill lead.
Wow, Eonic showing off just how safe Horus can be at times as he regroups with Lasbra. But you're right. LG have kind of won these last few skirmishes, but Renegades have had such good control of the jungle early on in the game that LG are kind of fighting back against that. These early game fights have looked good for them, but remember, we said there's a bit of a ticking clock with all these Guardians on Renegades' side. Eventually, it's going to be tough to chew through it.
And eventually, Funballer will catch up to the experience out of Joshy. There's a 4 totem of coup lead for Renegades to get that 500 gold lead that they've established, controlling those neutral camps, like you said. 1 speed buff here, a back camp invade there, and Renegades knows how to kind of pull and push their opposition whenever they want.
And so it's up to LG to kind of keep their heads on straight, I would say here, Toli, because they clearly have the ability to team fight well and to respond to some pretty tough initiation from Renegades. I mean, the collapse on the Lasbra by those Oracles was actually pretty well executed aside from the final judgment. This last Tier 1 tower dive was pretty nice too, and LG have still been able to find their footing and respond.
Looking like Book of Thoth was the idea for Funballer to complete. A little bit late in terms of stacking, but these long laners, man, that's all they do is farm, farm, and farm, as Joshy is fine with that. He wants to keep Funballer in that lane if the rest of the team fights occur on the right side of the map, utilizing that global pressure to LG's advantage.
That's a great point, though. Third item, Book of Thoth, does kind of signify just how much Funballer expects to be getting solo farm over here, right? That he thinks he's going to have time to get that fully stacked up. He does have Joshy pinned beneath the Tier 1 despite the experience disparity in this long lane to show you some of Thoth's strength.
It'll take a while. What is he at? 10 stacks now?
Yeah.
90 more to go, Finch.
Yeah, that's a big while before this Book of Thoth's ready.
15 waves.
Funballer's going to get him. He's not wrong.
7.5 minutes. Like, if he gets every single minion last hit perfectly.
Well, he should be able to make his way there eventually. We usually see these bigger stacking items built sooner, but Funballer wanting the Pythags online. This has become such a staple item for not just, you know, kind of mages in the solo lane, but all mages. It gives them the power they need. Lifesteal's great too, and the health and CDR. I mean, this item is just kind of blossomed into a must-buy.
Especially when you're using the passive for not only yourself, but your other allies to get that lifesteal. Imagine Dardez with a little bit of lifesteal when he's not building into it because he's a Muzen comp middle. He's going for physical power, he's going for the penetration. He might be healing a little bit from that. And normally, as a mage hunter, doesn't matter if it's mid or long lane, you're always sitting side by side in these team fights late game. So utilizing that Pythags piece will be very easy for Dardez to do.
And even with these last few fights, and like the trade and picks, they've still been 2 for 1s or 1 for 0s, so not a ton of blood spilt just yet. Only 9 in the 17.5 minutes of this game has gone on. Cherryo looking to try and correct that, with iRaffer rolling in as well, but not a ton of kill potential. Instead, they control the Gold Fury Pit if they want to go there.
So I was talking about Nika's build before and how I was going to predict it would have been a pre-win. Going for a different style, though, but hold that thought, though, because Renegades going for the very first Fury of the game.
And Final Judgment's the best secure on the map right now, so it's hard for LG to steal it. Renegades indeed grab the objective, but that is a big cooldown they no longer have. Lasbra moves in aggressively, but Nika's wall cuts off the chase, and just like that, Renegades are out.
Renegades can actually just keep doing that because of all the space control. Nika's Thor wall, you're going to be able to control a lot of space with Raffer's knock-up Cataclysm, so the damage is there to confirm the objective from Funballer, and then you also have the escape outs.
LG trying to find something in the back end of that clean Fury grab by Renegades, and so with a Pyromancer, Frenzy popped, and it's been burned quite quickly. Renegades were nearby, but couldn't get in to actually find the steal, but now Nika's in trouble, has to channel the ultimate just to safely retreat.
A very interesting point to make was that Frenzy that was popped for the Pyromancer. Raffer saw that, and with that, I think there's going to be a little bit of action on the left.
Joshy now in some trouble as he had to come over to try and defend the Tier 1 tower in the left, but as good as Chernobog is at rotating, Athena can match, and that does mean he's in some danger. He makes his way back to safety, though, as we follow along with Snoopy in the middle lane. Nothing to worry about for him there. This Tier 1 tower, though, feels like it has to come down. Funballer charging Final Judgment off the taunt. That's such a cool coordination that they just used, but it still wasn't enough. Cherryo's the one that actually ends up falling. Raffer comes in for the shockwave, and that's not enough for the kill. Cataclysm isn't either, and finally he gets the shutdown, but now he's stuck under the Tier 1. He's swinging away at it like a rocket, finally brings it down.
And there's no way Lasbra can find the kill. They need to find a way to stop the rollout, but he's already in that second half CC immune. Joshy will go down, trading his life out for Cherryo, but losing the tower at the same time. A good timing to use the beats and the Aegis. He knew exactly what Renegades were lining up. Once you hear that channel ultimate from Funballer, you're like, something's a-brewing, and I think it's me, guys. I need some help. So 2 members out of LG were making the rotation, but it just wasn't in time anyway because of how low that tower was. If that tower was healthier, I think Raffer dies there because he wouldn't be able to literally get basic attack in. So that was a fun instance to watch.
That was definitely a crazy set of events that we just saw happen on the left-hand side there. I mean, I love the blink taunt to confirm the Final Judgment, then Joshy surviving, finding a return kill, Geb swinging away. I mean, obviously Cataclysm can't do the killing
It's
blow,
not
right?
lethal because it's percentage
Exactly.
health. So here's what iRaffer was thinking in his mind when he blinked in. He thought that maybe the knockup was going to be enough to get the kill. But the thing is, it does more damage the closer you are to the target. So that's why from that distance, it was miscalculated on him. And then he realized, like, he's still low enough. I'll go literally walk up to him, cataclysm him since he used the beads on the Athena taunt, and one, maybe two basic attacks sealed the deal. I almost would have liked to see iRaffer engage with a cataclysm, then walk up with a knock-up, and that would have probably guaranteed the kill without a basic attack. Just small things like that increase your ability to min-max.
Right, that's just the kind of margins that we're working at. So funny, man. That's probably the only time I can think of where a Geb was sad it was percent damage, right? And not just some flat amount that would have gotten the kill there. But normally, it's way, way better that Geb is blinking in for the percent damage off Cataclysm as Snoopy able to grab some of these back camps. So we're finally seeing some more action here, totally, but it's favoring Renegades just a bit. Can we see the charts, Doug, to show you just how close this game has been? It looks like a heart rate monitor with how up and down it's been on the experience side, and only slightly favoring Renegades. 1,800, I mean, at this point, that's almost nothing.
I agree with you. I think LG have missed their window to utilize Joshy's strength. Funballer now about to hit level 20. Nika should be fine once he hammers away. Even iRaffer rotating to maybe play defense on the tier 1 tower. And because of all the kills that LG had, they weren't able to, for whatever reason, to group up on the Gold Fury. It was Renegades that did it first instead.
Renegades very nearly, or actually were able to grab it too, so that definitely hurt LG. That's about the difference between the two teams right now as well, is that Fury that LG, or rather Renegades are able to grab, as now just a good old-fashioned force of the tier 1 tower in mid. Cherryo, Dardez, and iRaffer are the three to do it. Dardez does get some good shots in, but not enough to bring the tower down. That's Cataclysm expended as well, and now Lasbra has dropped the tectonic shift. Xaliea blinks in onto the back line, and there's plenty of Thoth damage, but Eonic brings the team right back to the front. iRaffer goes down first thanks to Joshy. That is going to be the final judgment fired as well as LG fall back to the tier 1.
Eonic couldn't find that good enough escape there. Actually, Nika taking out Xaliea under the tier 1 tower. Nice rotation from Nika to make his presence. He wanted to catch Eonic against the wall, but regardless, stopping a Horus from dashing through it, near impossible. So yet again, Renegades, they're winning these train outs by getting the objectives after the fact.
That's right, the exchange was probably slightly in favor of Renegades. They dropped Dardez to get Xaliea, which is pretty nice, but the tier 1 tower confirms that it is indeed in favor there of Renegades on the back end. And we were talking a lot about these build paths earlier on, and we're starting to see a clearer idea now. A 4th item sovereignty for iRaffer. Cherryo went mid-Guardian Mail into some of this basic attack damage from Joshy. We'll have to talk about that later as Primal Fury melts underneath the damage from LG.
That's kind of what Merlin brings to the table, honestly. Having Spear of Magus, Obsidian Shard, a lot of penetration available to not only melt the players, but also the PvE side, sitting at level 18, fully stacked to Book of Thoth. He's hitting hard.
Yes, at this point, there's plenty of damage coming out there from Snoopy. I was talking about some of those builds earlier. Dardez does have the Brawler's Beat Stick to give them some anti-heal. I don't know how much you have to worry about it. Eonic obviously does do some healing, and then there's going to be some of the lifesteal built there by Joshy, but aside from that, it's not too much to worry about. Maybe they want to try and limit this Vamana as well in the big baby form, so the Brawler's not going to hurt there.
No, definitely not, as it's Renegades now trying to get an objective for themselves,
Oh, LG
but
got it.
LG confirm it.
I wonder if that was the Merlin damage. I don't know if Blizzard was quite close enough. Dardez is locked to the tectonic shift way in the back line, so Eonic brings in the Horus ultimate in the knockup, but final judgment from Funballer turn things around. Nika finds Lasbra to make it a 1-for-1. Xaliea still on the warpath, but Cherryo's out of there. It's 4 members of LG nearby. Nika doesn't find much at the Anvil of Dawn and barely gets out.
Finch, normally it's assassins that are looking for the flank, not mages, but Funballer thinking like an assassin there, positioning himself beautifully, taking advantage of the grouping from LG. Gets, I believe, 2, maybe 3 members on the final judgment, trading out Dardez's life for Lasbra.
Funballer has the beads forced out from Eonic's blink. 2-man taunt, though, brings Eonic back into a world of hurt, and the Geb shield means that it's Renegades. You can keep surging forward. Aggressive evade and punish from Funballer to lock down Joshy, and the turnarounds are real from RNG.
This is how strong Renegades are once they start grouping, utilizing the Geb and the Athena, having Funballer's long-range damage, a double taunt again!
And now they can lock down Eonic. Xaliea, the next one on the chopping block. Snoopy's damage is strong, but he cannot do it alone. Renegades turn that fight around in a major way, up 3,000 gold now, and with all the pressure. In fact, Nika wants Snoopy here by the tier 2, but I doubt he'll be able to find this kill.
Oh, it's a bait! Oh, the flicker Funballer was so close. He was a sleeper pick as Lasbra takes out Cherryo on the side. The beginning of the game, Funballer was actually getting focus fired by LG, and he was just quietly farming away, getting those stacks of Book of Thoth, but now he's anything but quiet, dominating the player damage charts.
Yeah, Funballer, I mean, the Final Judgment was the most important cooldown now at this point, man, and when Funballer's able to find the big shots, I mean, you saw how it turned the fight around in that choke point on the Chaos side of the Fire Giant pit. I mean, that was huge for them, and it was on a low enough cooldown that it was back up for them on the tail end of that Tier 2 tower fight from to make a shot at maybe taking down Snoopy. The good news for LG, though, is that was still a pretty close fight. Lasbra found that pick onto Cherryo, and no one was able to go to the FG. But now they have to fight into 2 Guardians that are essentially full built in the late game, and it's not going to be easy.
There's a lot of value from Cherryo's taunts these times around. The longer the team fights go and Renegades continue to use that asset, I think LG have to position in a way that they don't want to. They want to group up and force the fight, get Snoopy's AoE damage on as many RNG members as possible, but it's near impossible with how Renegades have been forcing it now as the Geb and the Athena are online. I'm looking at these builds, Finch. They're all so tanky, and they don't need to have the damage because of the base damage that they have. The Geb % damage. Cherryo being able to get the penetration for his teammates with a Stone of Binding as the Defender of Olympus, and also that shield wall will even melt some of these tanky targets.
I'm just worried, though, about Joshy's damage. He ended up going more into the crit with that Deathbringer. We talked about this earlier on. But, I mean, look how Renegades have built. Nika went way more tank than I was expecting. I mean, Mandala Discord built there, too. The Genji's Guard, Midgardian Mail is there for Cherryo on top of being Athena. And, obviously, Geb can laugh off crits just thanks to his passive. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to shoot through these tanks. I mean, is it up to Merlin then at this point with the Obshard Magus to try and burn them down?
It definitely is going to be up to Snoopy to step it up, but it's also important to make sure you recognize where these Guardians are, because Cherryo and iRaffer is going to disrupt that DPS out of Snoopy. The crits from Joshy onto a get passive, like, that's laughable, right? So you would want, obviously, Chin Size instead, potentially, for getting that Geb health a little bit more. Maybe even Titan's Bane wouldn't be a bad idea. Attack speed for the most part. Like, you could have went double lifesteal with Aussie potentially.
Sure. Well, I'll be keeping my eye then on where we see Joshy in these fights and who he's trying to put his damage on, because obviously it's still very, very good if he is able to catch out Dardez and or Funballer to blow them up quite quickly. It's just a matter of if he can make it to them and if Snoopy can do enough damage to kind of force back Cherryo and iRaffer so he can make it to them. Looks like LG, though, are positioning around this next Fury, and they're right. We're only a second away from it respawning, but Dardez, iRaffer, Cherryo are all on this side of the map, and they have Oracle Vision, so this won't be a secret.
But a little bit of a pressure onto Cherryo as the Eonic spots him out, forcing LG to actually reset it despite Nika and Funballer not being there. Now it's Renegades getting the better end of it.
Lasbra's already used the beads. Cataclysm locks him down, and up in the air is Nika, but they don't even need him. Dardez finds Lasbra for the first kill of the engagement. Now Snoopy's in trouble. Cherryo with a 2-man taunt to bring him back in, but there was no follow-up damage this time. The wall from Nika cuts off the escape, but Funballer can't land the shots. He doesn't need to. Nika teleports to hammer, and Snoopy goes down.
A clean 2-for-0. Now Renegades have the options of getting this Tier 2 tower and even getting the Phoenix. I don't expect Gold Fury or the Fire Giant.
They can continue to surge, and if you all want to know the results of me watching who Joshy DPS'd in that last fight, the answer was he didn't really get to DPS anybody. He was on the run. Now he's moving in for Cherryo, who can't get the Defender of Olympus off in time. The Chernobog hits home onto the Athena, and now Renegades, they don't get Phoenix. I'm not even sure if they get FG.
A little bit of a lazy back in there, unfortunately, from Cherryo. I'm surprised Renegades don't go for the middle Phoenix. They were right there after the Tier 2 tower in a 5-on-3. You don't necessarily have to have Fire Giant when you have that kind of a player advantage.
Instead, they will get the Pyromancer, and the Tier 2 tower gold is helpful too, but instead of a potential back-breaking play like Phoenix or FG, instead, it's a flesh wound, and LG are still in it.
Because I'm looking at their composition, Finch, and Thoth is one of the best defenders and siegers with that distance, but instead, they wanted to go for a safer call. Unfortunately, getting caught out with a Living Nightmare is not something Renegades anticipated.
Well, LG trusting Eonic and Xaliea to zone and trusting correctly, Gold Fury goes down in their favor as we just crossed over the 30-minute threshold, which means they've cut that lead to under 3K, and the experience deficit at this point is irrelevant. It's just that slight bit of gold that's between these teams right now and who has the correct relics up. I mean, LG, man, I don't know how you can't be impressed with them. I know they got 3-1'd yesterday, but it was not an easy set for SK if you go back and watch it back. And now taking Renegades, I think the top team right now, them and Rival in the SPL, this long into the match, I mean, they're playing well.
Right there with you, Finch. The numbers are a little misleading between the Phase 1 transition over to Phase 2. This is a new LG roster now with Snoopy and Eonic, but speaking of which, Eonic bit off more than he can chew.
He is in some trouble, makes it back to the rest of the squad, but you definitely don't want your Horus half HP right before the Fire Giant fight.
I mean, let's give LG some credit here. They're 31 minutes into the game with Renegades, the team that went undefeated in Midseason Invitational, holding their own, tied for kills, barely down any gold, not losing any of their Phoenixes, and doing a good job forcing the engagements on their own terms.
That's right, and forcing Renegades to play cleanly. And Funballer, I love that he's kind of psyching them out with the Final Judgment, because they have gone for these blink taunt plays. Every time he charges Final Judgment, you have to be ready. As Frenzies pop, that means Eonic wants to go in. Nika the early target, but a Geb Shield negates a lot of the relevant damage. Renegades still threatening the Tier 2 for now.
Not only using Funballer's long range, but also the honey from Dardez to spread that damage without any real sustain. Like, Horus sustains a little bit, but not really that much to the point that they can continue to defend this tower.
Nika on the left-hand side is keeping Lasbra out of the fight. As Renegades is trying to force down the Tier 2, we don't see this very often. Perhaps they're trying to bait LG into a bad fight rather than actually just brute force the Tier 2.
They're slowly chipping away at the health bar. Like, Joshy's sitting at about 90% now that Eonic healed him, but Eonic's at like 60% health. Nika zoning away Lasbra on the left side, keeping the Cabrakan on the side, and even Nika can participate by throwing a wall in that position under the Tier 2 tower.
And you mentioned it earlier, LG would rather group up and all in, but Renegades aren't giving them a choice. Xaliea goes in aggressively, but the Horus ultimate has to turn. I think they wanted to go for Nika, but he has to come back under the Tier 2. In comes Lasbra trying to lock down Dardez, but Dardez able to worm his way out of there, and that costs Lasbra's life. The Cabrakan falls early on, but there's a lot of low health bars for Renegades if LG can make it to the back line.
The wolf slowly blowing away at the pig's house and finally chipped away at Lasbra now. The Tier 2 tower harder to defend now without this Guardian jungle. iRaffer going to force the issue alongside Cherryo.
And LG have to give it up here at this point. Taunt brings Snoopy back in, and he doesn't have beads to keep him alive. Funballer finds one of the easiest kills of his life as Snoopy drops. Tier 2 tower will be right behind, and LG and Tatters have to retreat.
Nika with a flank, zoning out Eonic from being a participant there with a Tier 2 tower. Yet again, not wanting to go for the Phoenix with a 5-on-3. This time, less mana to play with from Renegades. They expended a lot during that Tier 2 tower siege.
And this is why Renegades are so good right now. They've orchestrated a scenario where they kind of mitigated the best thing that LG's comp has going, which is their ability to kind of steamroll over you as a 5-man unit. They put him at the tower line, they poked him down with this Thoth and this AMC and the threat of the Athena blink taunt, and LG eventually buckled. They couldn't continue to answer correctly.
It almost looked as though we were watching LG's early game being like kind of this grungy bar rock concert, like local band playing at a bar, versus Renegades playing like an orchestra with their composition in the late game, executing to perfection. The long-range shots from Dardez and Funballer with the engagements out of Cherryo.
That's an interesting way to describe him. I kind of like it totally as Fire Giant at half HP. Keep an eye on Funballer. You saw Doug pointing out that he's got that Doom Orb for a good deal of power and a bit of extra movement speed. He'll be even harder to lock down as a result. Joshy can make his way to the fight at any time with Living Nightmare, and he is threatening the Tier 2, which would be nice for LG if they can find it.
This could be a win condition for LG. Eonic going to be CC immune, but that's not the target. They're going to go in the back.
Wow, somehow they find the taunt right at the end of that Horus ultimate to bring them back in, but it's not enough for the kill. Point-blank range, though, from Funballer puts the Final Judgment right down Joshy, but they find the first kill. Dardez falls as well. Now Cherryo in trouble. Nico makes it to the hammer, but he's still in some trouble as well. LG have turned this fight around, and Xaliea now hunting down the Thor. Beads buys him a second. He can make it to the hammer, but this fight's all the boys in blue.
Oh, the stun off the mark a little bit. iRaffer trying to do what he can to save his Thor's life. He's going to get pulled in and canceled on the rollout. Nika's going to go down. iRaffer's going to go down, and that's a deicide.
They can go left here totally because of the Tier 2 tower push that they were able to get out from Joshy. There is going to be people up here in 30 seconds, but that just might be enough time here for LG. They're taking note. The Tier 2 and Tier 1s are still up in both both mid and right. If they want to go for an end here, Totally, it will not be easy.
I don't think they're going to go for the Yen Finch. It's going to be a long time before they get this Phoenix, but they could definitely try. Dardez down for 15. Cherryo as well with Funballer. They might even find the game one right now.
They had minions pushed up, which means they had the backdoor protections removed. Eonic is going to barrel everybody in right away with the Horus ultimate to try and strip a game away from Renegades before they can respawn. Funballer's back up, but it's too much damage. LG taking game one over Renegades.
Honestly, this local band playing lights out. A standing ovation for the black and blue out of Luminosity. What a performance from both teams. It was so back and forth. It seemed that Renegades were about to go on like this weird late game snowballing, chipping away at that tier 2 tower, but there was never a point where they were confident enough to go for a Fire Giant, confident enough to go for a Phoenix with their 5-on-3s.
Yeah, that was just so impressive that what we saw from LG. I mean, sort of like you said with your analogy, right? Totally, it's Renegades who are the more carefully orchestrated team, but LG know how to crowd surf, man.
Oh, yeah.
And they were able to bring that game home at the end. Just one big play, and because they had that left side pushed up, they were able to end the game. That just worked out for them.
And it wasn't only that exposing the left side Phoenix, the rotational timing from Joshy's Living Nightmare was used after already Renegades committed to the point, so he was free to do what he wanted. Even though he ate a fully charged Thoth ultimate point blank range, he was still playing cleanup crew.
Yeah, I thought it was over for them when Joshy came in right to that ultimate, so somehow they turned that one around. Believe it or not, it is LG up one game over Renegades for now, but I trust in Renegades to bounce back. We'll find out after the break.
Alienware, the official PC provider of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the analyst desk. Myself and, of course, the lovely Taco are going to be riding this for the day to see exactly what goes on between these two teams. LG, though, up against Renegades. And if you missed it, well, you blinked pretty quick because LG took the game.
And you might not want to miss any more of this set because things are only beginning to heat up between these two teams. But Luminosity answered back to Renegades, and it was a pretty convincing end as well. Luminosity, I think, just kind of sorted out the main issue, and that was just trying to deal with all of that backline harassment out of Nika and Cherryo.
And Cherryo engaged quite a bit, I saw in that game, but then immediately LG to the rescue to an extent as the team started to collapse. But Josh on your screen here with this Chernobog that went off this game, Taco, how did he manage to do so? Is it just the whole squad working together?
Took advantage of that Living Nightmare in the early game, and a lot of fights that looked as though they were intended to be won by the Renegades actually coming back into Luminosity's favor as soon as this Chernobog showed up to play. A lot of really good placements of those tectonic plates as well from Lasbra to help keep everybody kind of corralled so that Joshy could clean up.
You could see Renegades trying to pick Lasbra there in that little play on the Cabrakan, but as soon as that happened, Eonic and Joshy both went in, followed up, turned it around, and it continued as this game went on. It was back and forth encounter though, Taco. It wasn't all LG.
The mid segment, though, I will admit, was very heavily in Renegades' favor. The range potential from Renegades was just outmatching the damage from Luminosity, and these taunts and blinks, all sorts of setup for the final judgments for Funballer to try and connect with, but every now and then Joshy would just barely manage to straggle his way on out of there and somehow make it back to base to then rejoin the fight later on. And I think that was really the main consistency here for Luminosity, is that even though Snoopy was having a really tough time trying to get anything going with the Merlin, it's understandable. He's getting nonstop harassed by a Thor, by a Geb, by an Athena, and it's tough to get any of your damage off. But that last little teamfight initiation here, I love that from Luminosity. Such a heavy switch up. And in my mind, I'm pretty sure that they were expecting Nika to go straight for the backline, because that's all he'd been doing the entire game with the Anvil of Dawns. There'd be one team fight taking place that was meant to be a distraction factor for Luminosity to respond to, and that last engagement, they just did not take the bait.
And I want to give some credit as well to what Luminosity did there, because the call at the end of the game, they win a big team fight, get a deicide, and the recognition to be able to go for that left-hand Phoenix when 2 tier 2 towers were still up in mid on the right-hand side, get the Phoenix down and end the game. The window was small, but it was there, and they recognized that.
In all honesty, Hindu, that was just a rank play.
It was a good call.
That was really all it came down to. These players, sure, they might be new to each other, but they are not new to the scene in the slightest. And that kind of shot calling as well, I think, is an embodiment of the kind of new vision that this team has.
I think the main thing is from LG, they're hungry more than anything else. I think every single player on this team is hungry to show that they're good, and it's working out so far for Luminosity, at least in game number 1. But going into game number 2, what are we expecting to change from Renegades here?
I think that they should definitely look to take away either the Geb or the Athena. They can't really afford to let Cherryo and iRaffer kind of get their own comfortable pace to try and decide who wants to be initiation, who wants to be the peel factor here. And it was also a little bit of a risk versus reward situation there for Luminosity on Joshy in general. He went very heavily into that crit route for the Hunter, and against the composition he was dealing with, yes, it worked out, but it was cutting a little bit close at times.
Interesting to see. It's going to be LG first pick again this game. Renegades had the option with losing that game to choose second or first pick. They've gone with second, so they believe they can just make some minor adjustments and hold playing their Chaos side. LG going to buy away the Capri, Renegades with the Jingwei, so far the bands are the same as we saw for game 1.
Almost wouldn't be surprised to see Luminosity just stick to Zhong, Chronos, and maybe looking to pick either the Athena or the Geb early on. Geb probably going to be a little bit more of a priority pick between these two teams, because both Eonic and iRaffer can play it pretty well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to say Eonic was well known in his real heyday of Season 2, Season 3 of very good plays on that Geb. Zhong is banned away though by LG as expected. Renegade's going to take away the Isis, someone that's been, well, more in the meta since the mid-season now. A lot of buffs towards Isis, and she's very flexible because of it.
Then again, it is tough to imagine Luminosity not looking for a first pick Merlin one more time, because a big credit to that game 1 end is due to the fact that they had Snoopy on the Merlin.
Funny enough, Snoopy's stat line there didn't look the greatest though. 1, 3, and 9 I think it was, but then again it's a team
All he
game.
needs is that objective damage, and if Joshy's made to be the star because teams want to continue to focus out Snoopy, I doubt that Luminosity is going to have any serious complaints towards that. Sometimes you need a sacrificial lamb, and this time, it just happens to be Snoopy.
I think it's time for everybody to start necessarily sleeping on this Luminosity squad now, because I think a lot of teams may have come in a little bit underprepared, a little bit less practice than you expect. Not sure to say Renegades have done that, but LG are definitely flying high right now, trying to climb this table. Even with their loss against SK, they just took a game off Renegades, so the league is wide open, it feels like sometimes.
The entire time, Luminosity has kind of just been chilling on the sideline with little to no expectations from public perception.
Yeah.
I think even some of the other pros might not have been valuing this team to the extent that they were at.
Funny enough, I think that's the one thing that we see more often than not. The teams that are under no pressure seem to perform a lot better when they realize that, hey, if everyone expects us to be bad and we do well, that's just a bonus. If we do bad, it's not a problem. But if you're a team that everyone expects to do well and you start to lose, SSG, you're going to have a bad time. Community,
Too soon.
The community, man, the community.
Oh, no.
Geb, though, from Renegades, is going to be locked in again. One more time. Merlin was the first selection from LG, so no surprises there, Taco. You did call it, expecting Snoopy to get given that one more than likely again.
I'm not sold on the Horus, though, for Eonic. I did like some pieces of it from game 1. With the Cabrakan, I think, but it is still a little bit risky to want to run that Horus Cabrakan yet again, because Lasbra and Eonic definitely had their fair share of struggles in that mid game, trying to just pinpoint the carries there from the Renegades.
Well, Renegades locked in Ullr alongside that Geb. All great at the early pressure in the start of the game, but the one thing that he always struggles with is lack of CC immunity. No ultimate to speak of, except stance change, but that means, well, you can maybe look at a little bit more CC to try and pin this character down a little bit more so.
I also think that Dardez was just tired of being made the punching bag there for the Renegades. Luminosity was doing a great job at just punishing that Muzen for that lack of mobility, and Ullr might have a leap, but Cabrakan's still pretty excellent at chasing down carries. I like the idea on paper from Luminosity. I am just a little bit concerned, though, because I do think that Renegades handled that composition fairly well because of how melee range it was reliant on from Luminosity.
You think that Ullr's going to be in the mid lane then for Dardez here? Because I kind of thought about, like, Anho would be good against this Cabrakan Horus camp, right? The CC immune ultimate, the leap away, will give you a bit more opportunity.
Valuing the movement speed, I think, because
Right.
Cabrakan has so many effective tools for slows that it might just be better for a carry to be able to have that movement speed stim.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, he's still going to be able to catch you with the tectonic hits.
King Arthur selected early from Renegades. They held their solo lane pick last time round. This time, going to pick it up nice and early and probably look to take away some of the counter options that LG could run. If you remember, Nika did pilot the Thor last game in the solo lane, so they're looking elsewhere this time round.
Jorming under, though, still going to be banned away from the likes of Xaliea, and I think that this is a fairly flexible route now for Xaliea to go in, and like I said, we saw Luminosity run that Vamana, and while I did like what they were able to do in a lot of those team fights, there were some very evident issues with that lack of range. So maybe give Xaliea something that is a little bit more babysitter focused if you want to try and take care of Snoopy, or you can give him another aggressive warrior to try and play back into this King Arthur. I would say possibly even an Ares pickup here.
Babysitter focus for Xaliea though? Like
That's the thing, I just don't
weird.
see
You
him going
you don't
for
see
that
him being
playstyle.
a defensive supportive option, right? It's more of an aggressor.
Yes.
But then Cabrakan Horus. Sure, Horus is flexible in that extent, but you do want him going in with the Cabrakan to sustain him, give him the protections, and follow up further CC. Interesting.
I like the all or nothing mentality essentially from Luminosity that they seem to keep running with between Xaliea, Lasbra, and Eonic, and it kind of feels like a little bit more of a shift focus than anything, because typically we see teams kind of more dependent on that mid-jungle support aspect, but the core for LG has a lot more solo lane involvement.
No surprise to see the Humbats ban there from LG against Renegades. Cherryo has piloted that god many years, and it's in his top 3 most picked gods overall throughout his career, so no real surprise to see that. Fear No Evil, very useful in disrupting what Cabrakan and Horus are going to be looking to do on the front lines. But they have left Narja up. Now, everyone talks about Cherryo's Narja, but his god pull and play style of this, he's not played as many games as people seem to think. They just remember how terrifying some of his games have been on it.
Najah can also struggle, especially when dealing with the likes of a Cabrakan Horus, because both are fairly tanky members that are not ideal to try and target focus early on. The Muzen as well has a lot of burst damage follow-up for this Najah and the Ullr even. It's really all about Luminosity just finding the stuns to connect that damage.
A little bit worried yet again for the backline for LG here, but the Chaac also picked up here for Luminosity. Chaac gone through a couple of different iterations mid-season, had a bit of love there to him as well. I think the ultimate change was very solid for him. He's now a knock-up, not just a displacement. But a lot of people still believe he's not as useful as everybody wants him to be.
This is just a classic comfort pick for Xaliea. He's been doing this since he's been in the SPL for years now. That Thoth, though, it might be a run back for Funballer, and I liked what Renegades were able to do with it in duo the first time around. I don't think that he really struggled, so to say, in that duo lane either. I just think that this Thoth is meant to have the range yet again to try and better limit these beefy warriors in the front line.
From what I can tell, Renegade's really just major adjustment was ban away that Chernobog from Joshy this game, so he's not got that global rotation. LG didn't follow up with that, or maybe going with Apollo. Instead, they went for the Muzen Cobb, which in the laning phase, if it's going to be AMC up against Thoth potentially here, Taco, I think it's just going to be a farm off more than anything else.
Maybe a Merlin for Joshy even, and tossing that Muzen Cobb into mid lane to deal with the Ullr.
Well, let's find out if LG can take 2 games or get a 2-game lead. We'll find out. The casters are standing by for game 2.
Thanks, Hindu. We are indeed standing by as LG perhaps surprisingly grabbed that game one over Renegades in a very, very close match. So there are some adjustments. No Athena this time for Cherryo. He's on the Naja. But it's still kind of the same synergy with him and Funballer.
It feels that way, right? And this time Dardez is able to play the Ullr, taking a page from SK's book in that last set yesterday. Seeing how Paul played that one was dominating, honestly.
Yes,
that unofficial quadra kill once he rotated in the duo lane. Expect to see Lasbra still lean heavily on this long lane with Funballer on the Thoth.
It has become a bit of Lasbra's style here at this point, so we'll see if he shows us some deviation. Not the only thing of note, Xaliea is on this Chaac, which has become a good pick that he just really likes to use. And I know that it has worked for him at some times, but I just can't shake the feeling that there's some things that Chaac does that other gods can just do better.
Sure, I agree. It's a spicy pick, not maybe too much practice from Nika's side of things in that solo lane against the Chaac. That could be the one advantage. But the other pick, the Muzen for Joshy, to go from being first pick by so many teams, some teams even banning it away, to second last pick.
Yeah.
These teams having such different styles of identity.
And that's what I think is... It's no surprise that we're having the most open point that I can think of in SPL history and what I would call the most competitive point in SPL history all at the same time, right? I don't think it's any coincidence that you can play just about any kind of way and that there's more room for parity all happening at once. So it really is great to be able to see it. But Tully, a Muzen Cobb should rise above that in my mind. You should be picking this dude. He's that good for your team.
I agree, especially when you're always looking to contest these red buffs. The Ullr this time around, not getting that early game advantage, but look at this triple splitting from LG under their own tier 1 tower. This is really advantageous now for Dardez to be able to clear this wave whenever he wants to and look for this rotation, allowing the rest of his team to get the neutral oracles.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This 3-man splitting in mid, I mean, it's definitely fine, at least for now. It was only just the one wave, and they are breaking back up here, but it's just kind of become the new thing that you do here in the middle lane. You gotta give up some of that farm if you're Snoopy and or Dardez. But there was some talk about maybe sending Snoopy to the long lane to have the Muzen Cobb pair into the Ullr, but not the case. They're still trusting Snoopy here with the Merlin in mid.
It's something that he's played a lot of thus far in the SPL, honestly. He's played Merlin 8 times in 14 games in Phase 2.
That's clearly showing that if they can get this Merlin pick here for Snoopy, they'll take it. And they first pick it a lot, too, if I'm not mistaken. Very often, if it's available, they will snatch it up right away.
Sorry, 9 times in 15 games, because last
even one more, you're right,
game,
So they'll clearly pick this one up for Snoopy if it's available. As Eonic wants to try and get the party started, he looks for the knock-up immediately, but a good Shockwave and Geb Shield from iRaffer slows everything down.
Looking like no longer triple splitting this time around. I'm curious where the action is going to start off, because Lasbra, I think, didn't want to lean on that long lane yet, seeing as how he did it the last time around. And when he did, he got his speed buff taken advantage of. So he doesn't want to lose that when it's up in the solo lane. It's actually Nika getting bullied out. And this is the one point you could bully out a King Arthur before the Gladiator shield gives him the sustain.
And one thing that we talked about last game that needs to be adjusted for Renegades, because their comp's not that different, is that when they had their opportunities to push their lead, they couldn't quite find it. I'm thinking about that tier 2 tower siege in mid, where basically all they got out of it was Pyromancer on the back end.
Yeah.
When I think there was a realistic claim to Phoenix or Fire Giant in that spot. I mean, if Renegades gets those windows, they've got to make sure that they capitalize, because clearly LG will punish.
I mean, credit to LG, because I think Renegades did want to go for Fire Giant, but Cherryo got caught with a lazy back because of the Living Nightmare. With him backing, assuming he got off a successful back, the Defender of Olympus would have been used to claim that Fire Giant, and LG had a smaller window. They took full advantage of it, prevented Renegades from getting any sort of dominance in the late game.
And that's the kind of play that I just don't know that we would have seen from that Phase 1 LG. It does seem tough to compare them. I mean, it's really only Joshy and Xaliea that are still here from that squad. I mean, they're playing under the same banner, and they're forced to bear the same record. So it is hard not to, kind of look back at that squad as a good measure for their, that choice to make the swap.
Nice little advantage for Xaliea thus far in this lane. Forced Nika to back already, but he is with the Gladiator shield and also getting 3 Totem of Coups to his name, giving his team 375 gold at 4 minutes in.
People who really love Chaac though, and Xaliea is showing that in the early game, he definitely can establish some pressure. though it looks like a very slight experience favor there towards Nika. Well, now they both have the Glad Shield. I expect Nika to kind of hold on to that. Even with Chaac's sustain, it can be hard to fight into a King Arthur.
Yeah, I agree. This is the point where Arthur will dominate Xalia's Chaac up until Xaliea maxes out the Rainstorm to get even more sustain for himself. So we're going to see this very often.
No, don't get used to it. That's what King Arthur's going to be doing. As it looks as though Renegades want to try and be in position for this next red buff spawn, but with Dardez moving back towards mid, I think they've perhaps given up on it here for now. Hail of Arrows for poke instead of to help make sure they push this wave, so I doubt they're going to look for it.
They could look for the invade on the left side as Eonic is holding on to it for now. Raffer and Dardez thinking about getting in there. Raffer going to spot out Eonic. Going to back off, realizing that the mid wave has been already cleared. Might
Final
be waiting
judgment.
for Cherryo.
Being charged, but Funballer not going to let it loose. I'm so surprised that Dardez didn't push the wave more, but yeah, Cherryo's on his way to this underneath. Renegades happy to just stall, but Lasbra jumps in with a tectonic shift. That's the evade and punish from Funballer into everyone else, but he finds first blood first. Lasbra's already dropped. Final judgment comes back through, but Funballer will fall as well. It's 1-for-1, but Renegades get first blood.
Just too far forward. Now Eonic forced to use that ultimate just to disengage. Cherryo took a little bit too long to wrap around underneath, and for whatever reason, Funballer dashed in aggressively. Maybe he was anticipating Cherryo to get there faster.
Oh, but Joshy's in trouble. He's been hit by the Windfire wheels, and with an Ullr waiting below, that's a guaranteed kill for Renegades. They're now up 2-1. And yet again, it's Renegades setting the pace here of this game with an Ullr and an Aja. I'm not so surprised, but LG have got to be wary and ready of that coming at a certain point.
They definitely do. Last time it was LG controlling more of the early game, but now that Renegades has established an early dominant lead, I'm not sure how LG can adapt to that because they're a team that's still kind of figuring themselves out. I think that in week 4, they still have a long journey ahead of them to get as comfortable as they could be, and this is the point now where they're about to be tested.
Oh, well. That definitely hurts, and that's why Dardez is doing the back in mid. Snoopy falls to Raffer off the gank on the left-hand side. That's about as bad of a small exchange as that could possibly be. I mean, if Eonic is able to find that knock-up, I think they can find that pick onto a low-mana Ullr.
And this is so important to really start leaning on their strengths now. Funballer with this 1-level lead. Last time it was Joshy having the experience lead, as he's not going to be able to be the bully any longer on the Chernobog with these global rotations. It's going to be Funballer to make plays like that.
He is able to force out the purification beads by threatening the final judgment there onto Joshy, and he's not able to find it. Cherryo making a bit of a rotation in towards mid, but Snoopy falling back. I do want to see if we can go back and take a look, though, at that play we saw in the left lane where they were able to find the kill between Funball and Raffer, since we weren't able to see it live.
Seeing how Snoopy a little bit far forward. Raffer does cancel the back once he realizes Snoopy is pushing forward. Uses the aggressive evade and punish. Flicker, not enough distance to get away.
That's right. Raffer stayed out of combat long enough to be able to blink to counter that flicker if need be, and they're able to find themselves one more nice pick on the left-hand side. So well played there by the Renegades as a red buff again under siege by the Renegades. Ullr is here, but Eonic blinks onto Funballer. He does find the two-man knockup, but Cherryo is on his way to this as well. Immediately, Eonic starts channeling the ultimate for the knockup, and that does set up some nice turnaround, but Funballer's final judgment yet again rips through.
Joshy, no beads. Keep that in mind. He's trying to get away from the action. Cherryo is just still going to be relentless in this chase.
Yeah, and Joshy just can't get any backup. Eonic is nowhere nearby, and Snoopy can't get there either, so Cherryo makes it a 2-for-1, and they now threaten the red buff. Blizzard damage is there, but it looks like Renegades strip it away.
Great play from Renegades, continuing to lean on this red buff throughout their early game lead. Cherryo was now in position, and despite Funballer yet again being the sacrificial lamb, it's still a 2-for-1 for Renegades because of how clumped up LG were. The final judgment was used at the very last second.
Cherryo might actually be in a bit of trouble. He does still have beads, which will help out a lot, and Raffer's here to slow down this chase, so he should be able to make it out okay, but it feels like it just takes LG so much commitment to kill anyone on Renegades right now. I mean, is the Gem Shield just that much? Do they have enough self-peel on their own? Why is it feel like it's taking so much work for LG to find a pick?
Well, think about the escape pathing as well. Renegades aren't fully committing to the red buff. They're like waiting for LG to start it and trying to like last hit it,
right.
Wait for cooldowns to be used, like Blizzard and other things were used from Snoopy as he has to force the reset. And then on top of that, the escape from Funballer. the distance that the evade and punish allows him to get away, that had to have been a hard commit from LG. Ultimate from Eonic, blink from Lasbra. Now they're out of position. Now LG can't escape when it's Renegades with a numbers advantage.
Renegades forcing overcommits from LG time and time again, and it has netted them a 5-2 kill lead and about 1,800 gold out in front as well. We're not quite 10 minutes into this game yet, so it's a small nest egg, but certainly not anything backbreaking, though the 3,300 experience could be a problem.
And the reason why LG are forcing so much pressure onto Funballer is because he's not level 12 with the Aegis yet. So even if you do beat any CC, that Cabrakan ultimate from Lasbra is still going to contain the Thoth to allow the rest of LG to just pound away.
Cherryo is pushed up into the Order side jungle. Their early position for red buff spawn here yet again. It's Snoopy and Eonic who have to try and fight their way in to defend their own red buff here this time. I mean, Renegades are relentless with this left side pressure. There's the Horus ultimate to contest. They won't get there in time to contest, but maybe they can fight as iRaffer drops the two-man Cataclysm. Cherryo escapes to the sky with the Windfire wheels. Final judgment's there, but Lasbra survives, and it's Renegades who have to turn tail, but Nika's made his way here.
Even Cherryo able to get away from this one, but one soul laner encounters another one. It's Snoopy on the chase from Nika being zoned away.
But LG had the peel for their team. They came back and stopped Nika from being able to find Snoopy, but now Joshy's become the target, and Xaliea couldn't bear the brunt of the front line. He ends up falling as well. That's two that drop for Renegades.
iRaffer not only saves Nika's life with the Gab Shield, but finishes off also Joshy with the blink knockup. What a play from a support. We don't really see this kind of support play at all, but iRaffer has been kind of the shining star for this team, which is hard to really say when you got the players like Funballer and Dardez just finding so many kills.
That's right. Renegades have been popping in all 5 roles. I mean, I feel like Nika doesn't quite get as much credit as he deserves for this team's success. But right now, the way that iRaffer's been playing when you factor in the MSI performance as well, he's just the hottest support right now in the league. And we heard Dardez talking about in that interview that played before the game, you feel like you can't die when iRaffer plays this well. Like, he's always got your back. He's always going to save you. And you can go in and make aggressive plays because he'll bail you out. And that's just because of how well iRaffer's been playing.
You know, LG trying to take a shot at iRaffer and picks and bans by banning away the Khepri in game number 1 and also number 2. But when the gap is still open, it seems that you just can't stop the iRaffer train of pain, it feels like. So it gives more freedom for Dardez and Funballer to get this kind of a lead. Now sitting at level 12, Funballer is going to be very confident having the Aegis in this next red buff invade.
And LG might just have to give it up totally. I mean, it's not worth losing 3 members and the Gold Fury 4 on the back end. And I know it definitely isn't a winning strat, just let your jungle be taken, but if they can't defend it, they gotta leave. As Cherryo comes in one more time, the red buff is defended this time by LG, and Cherryo's a bit isolated on his own. It's a good tectonic shift coming out from LG, but there's no way they can punish on the back end. Renegades get to just leave.
They do get to leave as LG have to commit if they want to even pick up this red buff. Cherryo even looking for the flank potentially, looking for Lasbra on the back end of it. Not catching off the back in time.
Just in time that back goes through. I can't believe he committed to the back there. Some nice ring bounce damage comes out free of charge in Cherryo's favor. There were some pings coming through. They knew what was going on, but instead they'll just go steal the purple.
Honestly, even though Renegades weren't able to secure the red buff for themselves, by denying LG from picking it up, that's still technically worth.
Lasbra's been taken up by Cherryo, and Dardez and iRaffer on the way. I think Dardez has used the jump already. Bladed arrow off the mark, but no way Lasbra makes it out. It does not matter if Dardez used the jump or not, though. No one is there for any counter-aggression. Renegades get to leave yet again.
It's been a long time since we see some sort of real synergy between Naja and Insert Mage here. But the way Cherryo and Funballer have played it has looked very clean. Now Cherryo with a small window to get the speed buff.
Wow.
LG don't even react to that. To be fair, Lasbra's dead.
Right.
So if anyone's going to react, it's going to be him.
Wow, another clean engage. The ring bounce did half of Snoopy's health, and then the Cataclysm plus the sash sets up for another death there for the Merlin. And this feels a little bit more like the Renegades are familiar with from MSI. This unrelenting pressure from the early game, and then they just take what they want from the map. The red buff, the speed buff, the tier 1 tower, Snoopy's life. It's all Renegades to take when they choose.
Just at the blink of an eye. I didn't even expect that play coming through from Renegades to be that fast and just without any hesitation, building off of a 3-level lead now for Dardez' versus Ullr. Flashbacks of that SK set.
Yes, this is reminding me very much of that as Dardez gets off to a 2-0-4 start. Maybe not quite Paul levels of dominant, but he's getting there at this point right now. And LG just don't seem to know what to do and where to go to try and alleviate this pressure. I think that slight over defense on that second red buff invade where the Gold Fury gets taken by Renegades, that felt like that real back-breaking moment.
Definitely overcommitted there, and as a result now, it's not only Snoopy with the level deficit, it's also Lasbra's Cabrakan, and that's never feels good when the Guardian jungle doesn't have the same levels as an Assassin's counterpart.
Well, you're expecting, as that Guardian, to at least use your levels and that base damage to kind of make up for the class disparity there, but instead, Cherryo with a huge lead, and with 3 items completed, Lasbra sitting on just the tier 1 of his 3rd item. There's a lot that's favoring Renegades here right now.
Definitely agree with you. Lasbra maybe could have looked for another dual lane presence early game, same way he did in game number 1, but instead, not going to be the case, as I think it was the reason why they did that in game 1 was because of Joshy's Chernobog, to be able to confirm that between Lasbra's Blink, Eonic's Blink, the global pressure from Chernobog, now Joshy on the Muzen can't really chase down that kill.
Wow, another speed buff invade for Renegades. I do want to point out this Contagion for Nika, because I actually thought this item would be picked up a lot more in response to King Arthur, but we don't see one there for Xaliea right now. Instead, it's the Blackthorns after the Glad Shield and a Pride one on the way.
And with how far behind Lasbra and Snoopy are, you don't have to worry about the magical damage. So you just got to respect this level 16 Chaac, even Joshy a little struggling now in the Muzen as that's going to allow Nika to make this dive a reality. There's a lot of healing from Xaliea, a little bit of healing from Eonic as well. So it's a good pickup. I don't think there's much more to be required besides that Contagion and the Brawlers from Cherryo.
I think so too. I think this is a great pickup into that Chaac heal in the Onyx as well. Not only do they grab the Oni Fear, but they try and steal red, which LG defend successfully here this time, but Eonic needed that dash to get out of there. He was in trouble. The Sharks were circling.
Even though LG yet again confirmed the red buff, they just can't pick it up, Finch.
Yeah.
This is a similar story where they're either last hitting the red buff but not picking it up, or they're losing it entirely. So at least they get the golden experience, but I don't expect LG to hold on to this left tower for longer.
And Renegades have it's been the cleanness of these engages that's really impressed here from Renegades. That kill onto Snoopy comes to mind. The way they've been able to play around these red buffs and make it back out without losing very much has been clean too. I mean, Funballer took 2 early deaths and still maintains a 4-level lead over Joshy. They just play so well together.
They really do. Now, to be fair, Joshy did die around his purple buff without using the beats up against Cherryo's ultimate, as Cherryo forced to use that ultimate defensively. A little bit of a damage check from Funballer. No real kill potential there with only one ability, but doing 50% health on a Guardian feels good.
He's like, oh yeah, I do a lot of damage to Lasbra. Great news. The Stone of Binding will help him out some in that regard, as Nika yet again goes for the steal. This time he does not find it. Snoopy picks up the buff for good measure. Nika is being chased by 3 members, but Renegade's not too far, and yeah, LG realized they can't do it.
He's totally fine, Finch. I wasn't even worried for him. Level 18 King Arthur might even win that 1v3.
Well, Xaliea, we might not be nearly as confident in surviving. Dardez does take about half HP, but Snoopy can't even safely walk into his own jungle at this point. A blink in for Meek as well to force out the Aegis, and he's able to find the kill underneath the tier 2 tower. There's the axe landing from Dardez to set up the turnaround play, and Renegades decide now is as good a time as any to come take the tier 2.
And without the Merlin AoE damage, it becomes a lot easier to siege this tier 2 tower. Funballer, not too much mana left to play with. That might be a disengage as a result.
Looks like Renegades will make the call, and I think this is right. No need to overcommit. They'll just take the red buff yet again and then go. I mean, and that's the kind of restraint that a top team needs as well that Renegades just showed.
Snoopy not using his beads during the Excalibur's Wrath means that he had a lot of trust in his teammates to peel the King Arthur after the fact, because if you let King Arthur fully use his ultimate on you, there's no world where I am not chasing the remainder of this kill potential to force beats, force the Aegis to allow my teammates to clean up, as if he did beats that ultimate, he would have taken way less damage and might have been able to survive under that tier 2 tower.
Instead, Snoopy holds on to it, and Nika is indeed able to not only find the kill, but open up the map a bit more. They don't actually get the tier 2 tower, but Yet again, speed and red went the way of Renegades. Now finally LG could step out beyond that tier 2 tower line kind of across the bottom side of the map and at least find some farm, but I don't see a world where they can take a fair fight with Renegades right now. They're down 10,000 gold and a ton of experience as well.
The experience is the bigger factor
16,000.
because it's just tremendous. As much of a lead as Joshy had in game number 1, Funballer's been able to get that, and this time his team is playing off of that lead, whereas LG didn't really play off of that lead where they could have gotten that mid-game dominance as the first tier 2 tower might fall here, Finch.
I'm very curious about how Renegades choose to play it. It looks like they are going to group up for another tier 2 tower force on the left side. Eonic and Joshy are kind of showing some defense, but they'll blink in and try and start the fight here instead. Lasbra's waiting across the wall. It costs Eonic half HP, but the tower still stands for a moment, but not much chance of defending that.
No, definitely not. Eonic was trying to get off any relics that he could defensively, hoping that Renegades would not panic necessarily, but be a little bit more conservative with them, as now the second tier 2 tower being looked at from Renegades. LG not really wanting a part on this defense.
Man, who needs a Fire Giant buff when you've got the buff of a 16,000 experience lead? That is more than the difference between what an FG would do for your team anyway. So that they just kind of brute force the tier 2 in the left lane and the middle lane and fall back towards FG, and LG just trying to take what pot shots they can on the retreat. But even pushing up this far feels risky.
It really does. They're trying to figure out what advantage that they can get, knowing that Cherryo wasn't there, but as Joshy caught out of position, forced the beats away.
Cataclysm damage Joshy just took. That was from a level 16 Gab. Joshy falls first. Next one in trouble is Snoopy, and he's got a King Arthur Beyblading all over him. That's a double kill. They do find one return kill on a Cherryo, but it's only 2 members up for LG, and they might not even be able to keep 2 Eonic. Now isolated on the left-hand side, no dash target for him to retreat to, and Funballer is the one that claims his life. It's 4 for 1.
And now what do Renegades get as a result? The answer will be the Fire Giant. Shout outs yet again to iRaffer. His play in this entire game has just been phenomenal. Before that fight, he was sitting at 3-0-7 when Renegades did have 10 kills, a part of every single kill, and forcing that fight to force Joshy's beats, allowing Nika to play cleanup crew.
And you saw those damage differences on the charts just now. It's not a lot that LG were doing less damage than Renegades, but that's what a lead does for you. It doesn't take nearly as much damage to kill your opponents. They have less items and less like HP per level. A 4-to-1 disparity should have come up from those numbers, but that just goes to show the lead.
You know why it was actually that close to begin with? Cherryo misses his ultimate just by a smidge, so he dies ultimately. And also, there was no even ultimate being used by Funballer, as he just confirmed the Fire Giant with it. That team fight could have been even more dominant from Renegades.
I think so too, but clearly they're keeping some of their tricks in the back pocket when they're this far out in front. No need to reveal your hand too much. It's just the tier 2 tower that remains on the right-hand side for now before the Phoenix Siege can begin for Renegades, and they've got a ton of time with this Fire Giant buff to try and make use of it. LG do have a comp that's not so bad at defending. A Muzen, Cobb, and Merlin feel really good on the defense. It's just numbers they're fighting into more than anything.
It's the level lead. I agree that the comp is acceptable to play defense. Xaliea can slow down with the Rainstorm off of the Axe, creating this huge mud puddle to walk through, but it's just a level disparity. I think that Renegades can just all in with this kind of a lead.
LG are going to try and pick Cherryo here on the right-hand side. The Horus ultimate's been committed, so Cherryo is going to blink past the tier 2 and run, and I think that might already be the window closed on this pick attempt.
Smart. Lasbra, though, going to try to do whatever he can to continue the chase down, but iRaffer's right beside his jungler to bail him out.
Yeah, and eventually you're going to be running into the rest of Renegades, and because they committed to that pick, they're not completely set for this left side Phoenix defense yet, but without the minion wave here, they're not too worried, but Dardez even still is doing good damage onto the Phoenix.
Yeah, Xaliea going to get zoned away from Nika as we're seeing this Phoenix fall very quickly.
Cherryo moves in for the Windfire wheels. Nika has found himself a Snoopy way on the back line, and Final Judgment flattens Lasbra. He's a distant memory. Snoopy will join him in short order. Joshy has the Aegis, but this is borrowed time. He falls to the double from Funballer. Xaliea in some trouble too as he teleports back to the hammer, but just like that, Renegades are barreling into the base.
Xaliea going to fall as well. Only Eonic to play defense. 24 minutes in. I don't see how a level 13 Horus can stop the likes of Renegades now. now.
Yeah, and Eonic's pretty good at Smite, man, but you got to be real good to make this defense happen, and I just don't see it happening here. Renegades bounce back with a really strong answer in game number 2 to take down LG.
This is kind of what we all anticipated to see this matchup. How Renegades were able to build an early lead and maintain it throughout the game. Multiple red buff invades, a few speed buffs here and there, the rotations from Nika, the defensive and offensive measures coming through from iRaffer's Geb definitely was the catalyst to getting that lead.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the Geb was doing a ton of setup. Funballer was, again, having a really good game. I think this Ullr pickup for Dardez was really huge, too. It gave them so much pressure in the middle lane. I mean, those red buff invades were brutal.
Oh, yeah.
LG tried to defend them 2 times in a row, and they lost so much off the back of it that I think they lost the game right there.
Can't also forget, one of Cherryo's favorite gods is the Najab.
Yes.
Difficult to protect your own red buffs against the ring bounces.
Those ring bounces were pretty brutal in that game as well. I had a feeling Renegades would be able to answer back, and they absolutely were. Now it's time to see if LG can answer back on the other side of this break.
INAP, powering the control room for the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the SPL, and yes, Renegades have managed to tie things up 1-1 with Luminosity of all teams, who took the first game, but Renegades bounced back with the best performance they could do. They take the game, and Taco, let's break it down real quick about what exactly happened there in that second game. From what I could tell, and what you instructed me about this, it's all really focused around they couldn't kill the front line of Renegades.
What I was expecting to happen in game 1 actually just took one more game to actually transpire. This Geb selection, I think, has got to go by game 3 here for Luminosity if they want to be able to have any sort of serious chase potential like they keep drafting for with this Cabrakan, Chaac, and Horus. It just never really comes to fruition for Luminosity. They get put behind really early on from a lot of great invades from Renegades on that duo side of the map. Joshy never really gets a chance to try and utilize some of that Muzen Cobb damage, and Eonic, despite a lot of the success that we saw with this Horus in game 1, had a lot of struggles here in game 2, just trying to work around the Najah, the King Arthur, and King Arthur was a beast of his own, but the front line just felt impossible to deal with, and anytime Luminosity were even finding even the mildest of responses, it came at such a steep investment.
And I definitely mean, if you're telling me that the front line was hard to kill, that just means Thoth in the backside gets to free fire for days, and that's something you can't let happen.
It is not fun when a Thoth just has absolute free reign throughout a match, but what more is there really left for Luminosity to do when iRaffer is such a force to be reckoned with on this Geb? You got Cherryo, who's also opting for a slightly more bruiser S-type build on the Najah, and this play right here is basically all that Cherryo and Nika were doing the entire game to Luminosity. This Merlin and Muzen Cobb just kept getting ran down relentlessly.
Seems like Renegades recognized where the strength of LG came from, though. They only really banned away the Chernobog from LG this game, and then let them potentially run it back, and showed that, well, with us taking King Arthur this game, who was definitely an impact here, as Nika's showing, but also not having the Chernobog seem to have switched this around quite a bit.
Chernobog also has great survivability into the Thoth because you can use that into darkness to try and play around that route from the evade and punish as well as the final judgments in general, but more importantly, it was the lack of global presence from Luminosity, and that's exactly what Chernobog is best at bringing in an extra member to a fight that might not have been a win in the first place.
And the speed of this game just took off and continued on from there. It was a shorter game for the most part. In terms of, compared to the last one, 20 minutes, it kind of looked like it was done, but LG were just holding on.
It kind of looked like it was done by 14 even, but Luminosity, like we said, had some responses, but just not enough, because having to burn out 3, sometimes even 4 ultimates for a single pick, it just never really feels worthwhile after the fact. And sure enough, Renegades just had full control of the map, they had full control of the laning phases, and eventually it just all became too overwhelming. And I don't want to call it a snowball, so to say, because it did take a little bit longer than what you would traditionally expect, but that is largely just Renegades, I think, playing it safe after losing the first match.
This game now balanced out, but the real question is what LG bring out next? They came in with a team comp, it worked for game 1. Game 2, Renegades answer back and shut down that team composition, the meta style they were looking to play. So now game 3, LG have got to try and switch it up now, correct?
Correct, and they will be switching it up by taking that second pick, forcing the Renegades to try and shake things up a little bit here. But the big note that I'm really paying more mind to is just the Skeb pick. It seems as though Renegades are content to try and pick it as one of their top 2 priorities after the banning phase initially, and I think that Luminosity should try and work it out to see if maybe they can solidify that pick for Eonic instead.
It's a good point. The thing is, we've seen quite a few first pick Gebs just lately, and Renegades have that first pick option, so LG may have to just ban it away, which may not be what they want to do. Renegades, though, going to start things off once again with the Jingwei ban. They're really respectful of Joshy's Jingwei. Is it more about the respect of the play of the character, or is it more to do with the safety of the character?
A little bit of both. I think that by this point, Joshy has definitely warranted enough respect as a Hunter player. He's found enough consistent kills and done enough things well that Renegades aren't looking to take any chances. They're going to eliminate that Chernobog as well. Tons of Hunter focus so far.
But a lot of this from what Renegades is doing is giving themselves a potential priority pick in this first slot, and LG recognizing that will take away the Geb, which we were talking about so much about maybe Renegades going back to one more time. LG definitely identified that as a problem. Reffer getting his hands on it.
Well, even in the worst case scenario here for Luminosity, Renegades know that Lumi loves Merlin. So if anything, Renegades could just look to take the Merlin for themselves. It's not like Dardez is incapable of playing it. Heck, I wouldn't even be surprised if Funballer has it up his alleyway, since so many Hunter players in Season 6 as of late have been kind of transitioning more towards that mage dominance period.
Renegades really don't like this ISIS and have consistently been banning it away, whether first pick or second pick here. Something could be read into that with the fact that whether Dardez has it in his god pool, or even if Renegades like to play it on their side.
ISIS brings so much early game dominance that I can't say I'm super surprised to see them not wanting it to fall into the hands of Luminosity. I don't think that it's something that Dardez prefers to play, and so if Renegades just don't have to deal with it entirely, then that's probably best case scenario for them, as Set will be locked in, and I believe Set hasn't been banned every single time for these games. Game 2, he was definitely wide open.
Interesting.
Oh, no, excuse that. No, Renegades have been banning the Set, so this is just them taking the priority preference.
They value the Set over the Zhong Set, though. We've seen a lot of just lately, but mainly in the solo lane. We've not really seen him go into the jungle too much. It was really Verizzi or Scream that had run it in the jungle at certain points, but since then, we generally see it in the solo.
I love the Zhong Horus responses for this Set, because one thing that Set loves to do is try and break his way into the backline to abuse the carries. Horus should be able to shut down a lot of that, and just in case, the Zhong could go Hunter, it could go mid, it could go solo, whatever that Horus, wherever that Set is intended, and this is something that Luminosity can also kind of hold on to before determining, because they have a lot of flexibility so far.
And Olorun picks up for Renegades now too. That field going to come into play a little bit against Zhong could really shut down him chasing him with the ghost to do damage. Terra alongside it, one of the gods that gets picked up now and again here. So some nice plays that are weakened in the jungle on it yesterday, but I doubt it's going to be a jungle Terra, although Cherryo is one of those junglers that will run the Guardians on occasion.
I think what I like about this Terra is that it pairs super nicely with this Olorun, because that Sanctified Field is going to make life hell for Luminosity if they get caught inside of one of those Terra roots to look for an escape method. The Serqet, on the other hand, could be problematic for this Terra, just because of the Last Breath giving all that anti-heal, and Zhong as well, I think, is great for applying anti-heal options like the Divine.
Funny enough, I was thinking about Set. The one way to shut down Set, he has so much sustain when he pops the Kingslayer ultimate. Not having that if he gets hit by the last breath coming out from the Serqet here could really shut down what Set's going to be able to do in these fights. But it looks like LG really are trying to focus in, dialing on that Set a little bit to make sure it's shut down. Although Serqet viable in multiple different ways this game.
Lasbra has also been on fire with his Serqet gameplay, and the way that he likes to utilize the Cobra's Kiss to try and find as many targets as possible, or at least 2 every time, it sets up really nicely for that Deathbane. But good follow-up damage is what I'm noticing so far here for Luminosity, and a little bit more of that disengage option as well. Now, Zhong could struggle a little bit more than the Horus and the Serqet, but I definitely think that this is probably going to bode a little bit better for Snoopy and Joshy, because Renegades have been focusing those two very specifically.
Keep an eye, though, on what LG choose next, because at the moment they ban away 2 junglers to try and make sure Renegades can't pick one up. They expect Set will not be in the jungle position. Cupid ban coming through there, interestingly enough. Why Cupid?
Just trying to get rid of Joshy's God Pull. Put him on something that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and I think Hachiman or even the Anhur would still be really strong looks for Luminosity. Both have great CC immune ultimates that could also deal a fair bit of damage or provide that extra survivability aspect. And with Soul being locked in, still not completely convinced that this is for Joshy or Snoopy. I think that both of these carries from LG just waiting to see which one's going to fare better in which role.
How does Zhong do in the solo lane against Set? Just as a potential outside case, Xaliea could potentially pilot that, right?
I think that would be a great matchup for the Set.
Yeah.
Or at least for the Zhong. Xaliea should have a pretty easy time, at least at free farming and not feeling super pressured out by the Set.
Xbalanque has seen a lot during Phase 1 and towards World Championships at the start of the year here, but the Darkest of Nights did get a change where it no longer stuns at the tail end, it's just darkness now. Still impactful in team fights, clutters communication, and Renegades still value.
Well, Renegades can value that Xbalanque all they want. Luminosity are going to bring back a little bit of that global presence through the Apollo, and I like this also, but I'm still not fully convinced as to whether or not this is Apollo for Joshy or Apollo for Snoopy, because in either role, I think that it could be fairly impactful. And both of these hunters, though, do give a little bit of auto-dependency for objective shred, and I think that Renegades might have a slight advantage when it comes to actual buff confirmation and objective confirmation.
A little bit worried about Olorun in the mid lane, though, because of the fact that his clear in the early game isn't the greatest, he's not the strongest at escaping here against the Serqet, and potentially up against the Sol in the mid lane is what we could be seeing here.
Dardez said it himself already on that pregame interview. He has full trust on iRaffer and that he can just do whatever he wants and expect to be covered.
Do you reckon Renegades take this 2-1?
Possibly.
Well, we'll find out. There's Cherryo on your screen ready to go. So's Lasbra. Let's get over to casters for Game 3.
Oh, you know their names, but not mine, Hindu. That's fine. Whatever. It's Finch and Tolly that are here as we move into game number 3. And they spent 3 bans, LG did, on iRaffer here at the start of this game. And I think that was right? They banned away 3 supports to finally get him down to playing this Terra. And it's still Terra.
Yes. And on the flip side, though, Renegades taking a lot of shots at Joshy.
Yeah.
Forcing him into the Xbalanque, banning away Jingwei, banning away Chernobog, banning away Cupid, right? Picking the Zhong for themselves to now go back to the old school Xbalanque, a god that's been prioritized quite heavily in Season 5.
They put this Apollo here in the middle lane. I was so expecting this to be the Apollo in the long lane, but the Soul up against these Olorun, these 2 magical ADCs, Soul should not have a hard time getting lane pressure over there, especially early on up against Funballer.
No, definitely not, but if you're trading out basic attacks with Joshy, then you're expecting to kind of be really aggressive with that heat passive coming through.
Snoopy and Dardez clear at about the same speed, so they both make it back towards the middle lane. I actually do think early there's potential for LG to have both of these matchups be in their favor here, potentially, depending on how these go. This Apollo into the Xbalanque, this Soul into the Olorun. If they can play these early games correctly, Luminosity might not end up in too bad a spot.
No, but it's up to Renegades to see what they can do with this Erlang Shen on the setup crew, because Dardez is always going to be looking for the poke with the branching bolas. Snoopy shouldn't be taking that poke unnecessarily to build up that passive. Keep in mind, Xbalanque is passive. Every 1,500 damage he does, he gains 5 power. So at free 30 physical power after 9,000 player damage, probably around that 15-minute mark is going to be good to swing the team fights.
And I'm glad we are seeing Xbalanque here, totally, because, you know, he took a bit of a hard hit. There was a while where he was in top pick in every game. You had to play this god, and he went through that ultimate change where there's no stun at the end of it. But I still think that this god is good. He's got the CC mini on the dash. The ultimate's still strong as Eonic tries to make a play here onto Cherryo, but the rest of Renegades are there to deter. But Joshy's still taking some shots. This action might not be over just yet.
No, not quite, but not timing the aggression in sync with the red buff invades quite yet, the same way Renegades were able to do. This is the difference between Renegades, such a high-tier caliber teams compared to LG, but instead might be looking for a speed buff invade after those back camps.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on where Lasbra chooses to go on this side of the map. He's made his way to the order side to start stripping some farm, but he'll back instead, which I think was correct. Cherryo would have been here for that timing anyway, so it would have been a skirmish. As good of confirm as Deathbane is, I just don't know that Lasbra would have made it back out.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to really sync up that timing. Snoopy dashing away from the aggression as Dardez slowly but surely chipping away at Snoopy. A good way to really abuse hunters in the mid lane that don't build sustain is just to poke them out, and Dardez on the Xbalanque can easily do that with the branching bolas.
We saw that level 1, that branching bola was giving him a nice poke advantage over Snoopy on this Apollo, so they'll have to keep playing it, but that's not the only thing about the Xbalanque I want to mention. I do still think this god has some potential. Where do you see Xbalanque here nowadays, Tolly? Do you think he's someone that can still be strong despite the change?
I mean, if we're going to see teams first picking or prioritizing a Muzen comp, I think Xbalanque should still be right there with him, right? Like, sure, it's not as fast as, like, let's say, dropping the Beast Worm, but the poke and the dominance from just the branching bolas, even the team fighting presence of the poison darts, it can almost match the likes of the AMC. Not as strong, but certainly almost there. And the free 30 power, like if you're building crit as well, let's say hypothetically with Fail Not, why not go for the Xbalanque for that extra power?
That's right. Fail Not is something that might breathe some more life back into Xbalanque. He always felt really good when you can get away with a crit build because he has so much extra power that he's able to pump out towards that late stage of the game. So it just felt nice when we were able to hit those big crits. We'll see if he can indeed find a second life here. I don't think the god is entirely removed. This set, though, for Nika is another one that I think is worth talking about. I mean, Set's kind of just been a monster here in Phase 2. Whenever a competent player can get their hands on him, it feels like it's hard to answer.
I agree. I think Nika's had a standout performance in game number 2 on this King Arthur. But now playing this set, I think that it's important to find a way to out-rotate Xaliea, because you're not going to really bully out Xaliea to the point of getting him to back. He's a Zhong with a lot of protections, a lot of sustain on top of that. Once the Dynasty Plate helmet is completed, good luck even trying to kill him with the Kingslayer on top of it, unless Cherryo is present.
And Lasbra's gotten these back harpies twice now, and is still behind Cherryo in terms of experience, only level 4 to Cherryo's level 5. Both of them went blink, so they're both in a position to play aggressively on these junglers, and both, once they're inside the CC chain, won't have any really good options for getting back out. Might be the one that strikes first that ends up winning.
I agree, but the reason why Lasbra was behind a little bit is because he was still trying to get his own speed buff there on the backside. So you get less experience through invading up until a certain point.
Early
so
on.
eventually Lasbra will catch up once he gets his own camps. Not even sharing with the blue buff on Xalia's side, instead grabbing the mid wave.
Yeah, a bit curious he didn't want to be there for that one, as Renegades have had a much easier time protecting their own red buff than LG did last game. In comes the Apollo ultimate, the Across the Sky, and they've made Raffer the target, but some of it has to connect if you want to be able to take out a tanky Terra, and when none of it does, then the Terra lives fine.
Snoopy and Eonic using their ultimates for that attempt of a kill. Good recognition from Raffer that he was in danger, double dashing away. I like how Joshy was actually building that soul passive outside of the aggro range of the Oracles, not actually wanting to get the gold, the experience, or the vision, just for that heat passive, for the extra power and attack speed, anticipating that those two global ultimates would have connected before Raffer dashed away.
And they would have had a good opportunity, I think, to clean up a kill there, but instead, they don't find much. Still, though, it's really no harm, no foul, as long as Renegades don't force a fight, and I mean, and already Eonic's ultimate is ready to go, and Snoopy will have his before too long, so it definitely isn't too bad. It's just you don't want those windows to keep passing you by if you're LG. You got to be able to execute.
That's true. Raffer's going to get much scarier as the game progresses.
Yeah.
that Earth and Fury going to be a nightmare to deal with all the damage mitigation to limit some of LG's damage, because they certainly have the damage. Snoopy on Apollo, Joshy on the Soul, Xaliea with the damage over time. The problem that I'm seeing is the crowd control, right? It's single target for Lasbra. Eonic is going to have to get a really solid updraft to find multiple members. Xaliea needs to blink at level 12 to be effective on the Zhong. So I think Renegades has a window that they could play aggressive themselves, but Cherryo has been very content with farming.
Yeah, I am a bit surprised you haven't seen a little bit more from this Erlang Shen early, but I think that they might have identified the same thing you did, that they've got a pretty nice composition if it comes late, and there's just not that much control from LG. I mean, Xbalanque is still an extremely potent late-game AD carry, and obviously Olorun is. I mean, the whole reason you pick him is for that late-game point when he feels good with the Sanctified Field. So it feels as if Renegades are happy to lean into that.
And repositioning during Darkest of Nights. Granted, it doesn't stun anymore, but it's still hard to really coordinate a team fight when you're not able to really see, relying on different senses instead, as Nika's rotation is going to be super impactful once that occurs.
Yeah, the red buff invade is coming out, so we'll have to talk about Xbalanque later on. Renegades successfully strip it away, and it looks like Cherryo committed the taunt here, perhaps expecting the skirmish, so giving himself the heal, but Eonic is already quite low. Early on in this fight, Cherryo finds first blood by taking down the Horus. Lasbra has to ambush away too, and has to commit the blink. But what about Snoopy way on the back line? Funballer was looking for the kill, but couldn't find that either.
It's Renegades that are continuing to be aggressive and finding it yet again. Lasbra on a wild goose chase to try to get away from Cherryo, but he's on the wrong side of the map. Funballer can easily collapse on this at any given moment. Even Dardez.
iRaffer as well. There's no world where Lasbra makes it out of this one. He walks right into the walls and gives the kill to iRaffer. Lasbra sort of got to take his pick, I suppose, and who he wanted to give that kill to.
And that's going to be rough as the Serqet to continue to fall behind, just now finishing off that Blackthorn's hammer. He probably would have wanted that a little bit earlier to get that CDR to maybe ambush a little bit faster, but this time around, more experiencedly, Cherryo was able to force the fight after the red buff, getting the beats from Joshy, and the way Renegades retreated all under the same path, it's not as though LG weren't expecting it. Lasbra on the flank couldn't find the kills.
This Gold Fury is going to go down for Renegades uncontested. No one from LG is even nearby. So we can take this time to talk a little bit about what I think is one of the weaknesses for LG, which is that Eonic's positioning is aggressive a lot of the time, and because of that, he gets picked a lot in the early game. I know supports get picked all the time, but Eonic I feel like even more so, and that's kind of what started that whole cavalcade there on that left-hand side by the Oracles, was Eonic taking some free poke and getting caught.
And it's also not only about Eonic getting caught out potentially, it's the other side of Renegades getting caught out of iRaffer, right? Like LG going onto the support player, Cherryo now the focus fire under the tier 2 tower, surprisingly enough, anticipating Renegades would be a little bit scattered after the Gold Fury. Great call from LG. Might even get a tier 1 tower.
They're putting in some good damage, but they're running out of minions at this point, so I don't know if they can stick around. Lasbra's willing to commit, but he takes tower aggro first, makes him leave. Nika's now joined in, and Eonic can't even get the ultimate off in time. The skewer blows him up. Look at all the clones. No way you're living through that.
Especially with the Earth and Fury damage procced on top of that one.
Yeah.
Trying to get under that tier 1 tower is Joshy. Will successfully do so, but not before losing his second red buff in a row.
So the initial call from LG to commit there was correct because Renegades were scattered after they just got that Fury, but sticking around for the tier 1 might have been a bit risky, giving Renegades that time to kind of regroup and collapse on them, and I think that's why they end up taking that return spill.
A small factor to point out was Lasbra missing both Cobra's kisses.
He did, yeah.
Because iRaffer was able to position himself for a very well-timed Earth and Fury to continue the chase down. Something that I did want to point out was LG's overcommitment, not just between the tier 1 and tier 2, but even before that fight, which enabled the Gold Fury, was how far they committed onto iRaffer. He still got off, I think he was the target of the last breath, and after that, Earth and Fury got the shell off. Very difficult to kill a Terra there. I almost feel that LG allowed iRaffer to still get what he wants. Like, you can ban away the Khepri, you can ban away the Geb and the Kumbhakarna. It's like, why even bother against iRaffer when he's still going to get a god such as Terra?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we're seeing the strength of Terra here right now. I mean, iRaffer is able to play her so well. There has been some, light execution mistakes, I would say, from LG, because at this level, it's got to almost all be perfect if you want to beat a team this strong. But, But also, iRaffer's just playing it really well, and I love that he's gone into this Lotus Crown here next too. That lets him stay slightly relevant for some of that early game Terra damage that can feel potent, but also to give a lot of extra tankiness there as well.
That extra 20 protection is going to go a long way once that Earth and Fury does get procced for not only himself, but his teammates. And also, Terra's kind of like spam heavy, so that MP5, I think, is for granted by a lot of players.
That's a good point. Something that can very easily be overlooked as the experience disparity between the supports is starting to get a bit out of control now, Tolly. Eonic level 7.
That is true, but at least it's not the mid laners to follow like last game. Whenever you have a Merlin like 3 levels behind, that was a bad news bears.
Behind an Ullr.
Yeah, against an Ullr especially, right? So that was a problem, and I believe Funballer had about 3-4 level lead over Joshy in game number 2, maintaining the same relevancy. Despite losing 3 red buffs in a row, Joshy's been doing a good job farming it out.
Well, there may be a lot of different picks there for Renegades, but the game plan's the same. There another red buff invade as Snoopy can't find much of this across the sky. In goes Lasbra on the left-hand side, but he's met with the knockback and the knock-ups and the slows, and suddenly he's done. Eonic even used his ultimate trying to follow up, but nothing was there.
Renegades are just feigning pressure, Finch. This is what they've been so successful at, where they strip away a red buff and then they just disengage. Anticipating a team fight, Snoopy uses his ultimate. Same story goes for Eonic. Now I believe Renegades could actually be realistic about their next team fight with those 2 ultimates down.
Nice 2-man stun there from iRaffer, but Snoopy interrupts in the middle. Still ends up getting rooted anyway and taking some extra tick damage. I'm sure that he didn't want to. But LG do have some potential to make some nice rotations with the across the sky with that Horus ultimate, but they're not even going to get the chance. The tier 1 tower in mid is still standing as iRaffer commits heavily, but look at the turnaround. He finds the stun, and Dardez gets the shot on the Lasbra. I can't believe they made it out of that.
And now Cherryo's here in a 4-on-3.
He's so stuck.
Make that a 5-on-3 because Nika's right around there too.
In comes Funballer with that Sanctified Field that shuts down Xaliea, and they find the kill into Snoopy on top of it. Funballer popping off a little bit as he joins the fray. The tier 2 tower under siege 13 minutes in. Unheard of as Renegades have all the pressure.
Such a smart play coming through from Dardez. As he was confirming the kill onto Lasbra, he allowed the tier 1 tower to still stand despite Xaliea teleporting to it. Most players would recognize, oh, this is a 5 to 10% health tower with somebody teleporting to it. Let me kill that tower to prevent that rotation, but instead, knowing the numbers advantage would still be in Renegade's favor with Lasbra dead, enables the team fight to occur.
And they'll add the Oni Fury to the list of accolades there for Renegades on top of a tier 2 tower this early. And look at that spike off that fight in mid. And I actually kind of liked Lasbra's initiation there. He came in on the backside with the Cobra's Kiss. They thought they could take that fight underneath the tier 1 tower, but you can ban 3 things and iRaffer is still on a Terra. That just goes to show how deep the God pool is and how hard it is to limit him.
I mean, there's just so much physical power coming through from Dardez now as Lasbra's going to jump over, forced to disengage and respect that Xbalanque damage. Like right now with 6,700 player damage, that's a free 20 physical power boost that he's gaining from the darts as well as the branching bolas. And there's a lot of scaling from the poison darts to be able to utilize. 40% at base and then 10% ticking every single time.
This Xbalanque is starting to become a real problem. 1-0-5 has the Toxic Blade there for Cherryo as well, so they have anti-heal to amplify them. Xalia's in some trouble as the skewers come through, but the Recall Demons keeps him alive despite the gank.
He might die again if he gets... Oh, I wanted to see it so badly, Finch. But then again, a level 15 Sean Kui with that much protections and health, I don't know.
Well, now it's time for Renegades on the other side of the map to make their gank, and it goes much better. Look at the big heal from the 9 turns blessing as well as Renegades take the tier 1 tower. This could potentially be a good answer for LG to at least find Pyromancer, to at least get something on the map as Dardez tries to make his way in. He uses the beads to keep up the fight onto Snoopy. Rising Jaguar finds him the kill. Aegis immunes the damage. He keeps fighting with the Aussie proc. Not enough to 1v3, but clearly he's strong.
Oh, and now he's setting up for the cleanup potentially if iRaffer and Nika can group up and kill Yana, but Horus ever so slippery. But
What?
Renegades are not stopping on the left bench. After killing Joshy, they're now poking at the Phoenix.
Yeah, and if this Olorun stem is up, then he's going to be doing a ton of damage because there's minions here. Cherryo swinging away as well with all that extra attack speed. I think there might have been some Oni minions that help with this push. A 16-minute Phoenix taken on the left side.
Such a good play from Dardez, creating a distraction there, not only to be able to build up his player damage for the passive, but also enabling the split push on the left. And now Nika casually confirming Lasbra that was trying to be sneaky around the red buff.
And Xaliea commits the ult and still can't find the kill on iRaffer on the left-hand side. I mean, just like that, this game has gotten out of control now for LG. They cannot fight into this. There's the supernova there from Joshy, but when disapparates up, he's in a world of pain. Cherryo finds one more kill. LG starting to break at the seams.
Bench. Normally when a team loses, they're the ones that are demoralized. But after losing game one, it seems that Renegades were revitalized to get back into this set, dominating that game number 2, and might even close out this game in less than 25 minutes total time if it keeps up like this.
They're on pace too. I understand exactly what you're coming from there. I likened that game 1 to kind of like when you let your younger sibling play a game with you, like a fighting game, and they sneak in a win, and then you're like, okay, let me get back on my main. No more messing around. It feels like Renegades, as you said, were revitalized.
Yeah, I never beat my uncle, unfortunately, in those fighting games, no matter how hard I try. Never snuck go in there. Always got 3-0'd.
I definitely understand where you're coming from on that one, totally. It's Fire Giant now being seized by Renegades, and I mean, there's just no way that LG can come into this one, right? I mean, that's Fire Giant for Renegades, 17 minutes in, and they've already gotten a Phoenix. Now they can start sieging on the right-hand side, and normally, totally, I look to you guys in my tier 2s and I say, how do they stem this bleeding? But totally, I think if you can answer that, you should get in the coach's booth.
Yeah, honestly, because I don't have that answer when Xaliea, level 17 Zhong is getting tier 2 Tower Dome at 18 minutes in without any assistance to bail him out. It's pretty much a lost cause, but
sure.
The point is that Renegades, props to them for maintaining this kind of a dominant lead, because it was very quiet to start off the game, and then all of a sudden, they blew it wide open with some red buff invades.
Joshy's already taken a ton of damage. In comes Lasbra on the backside. He's knocked up, but still gets the last breath down. Sanctified Field slows their escape, and Nika in position to find Joshy. Snoopy falls soon after. Eonic at least can make it back to the fountain, but Cherryo's going to zone Lasbra away from that precious healing he desperately needs. He'll get some in short order as he's sent back to the fountain, and now the Titan is under siege. We're not even 20 minutes into this one, totally. 25 minutes might have been too conservative. Renegades take it before the 19-minute mark.
Oh my goodness, this might be the fastest game in phase number 2 thus far. Renegades maintaining their dominance ever since winning MSI. Really impressive stuff coming from them to slowly wait for their moment. We didn't see much coming through from Cherryo up until those red buff invades when he forced a fight onto Joshy.
You know, Saiyans come back stronger when they lose a fight, totally. So maybe Renegades have some golden hair in their favor this time as they grab that victory. That was kind of brutal, really, in all honesty. It happened so quickly. There were some of that red buff invade towards the beginning of the game that we saw from game 2, but that was just them steamrolling.
Yeah. Lasbra found some back camp invades on the opposite side, but once there was that overcommitment from both Snoopy and Eonic trying to kill iRaffer, it just wasn't successful. Renegades heavily punishing LG's overextensions.
Further dominance there from Renegades. I don't know if you expected to see anything else. So they are now up 2-1. We'll see if LG can make the adjustments after this.
Respawn, the official gaming chair of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the desk, and yes, Renegades did take down game 3 to make it 2-1, I should say. To tie it up, but not the case. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, Battlefield Olympus Chapter 3 has begun. Reward, you can unlock the Ruler Olorun skin now with that if you get involved. But Taco's joining me on the desk once more to break down game number 3. And Taco, I think that was just a sign of Renegades getting very upset about what happened.
Renegades are not happy about that game 1 loss, because even though this set is, getting a little bit more aggressive as we build, it still stands, I think, that Luminosity do have a decent chance to try and pounce back. This one just got away from them in the early game, though.
Interesting to see the Xbalanque in mid lane, though. Now, my question for that, Taco, is, was that, you reckon, Renegades during, when they were going into game, they saw that it was going to be Snoopy on Apollo, so they adjusted that?
I think there was just too much concern from the Renegade side of things that this Olorun would be too heavily abused in the mid lane, because it's already pretty easy to block his early game clear. You just stand in front of the wave. You don't let him have a chance to actually get that full damage off. And putting Xbalanque in mid lane as well means that Dardez has a little bit better survivability options against the Apollo. And the clear isn't bad either, because you're going to be starting with the branching bola. You've got decent poke, decent clear, and it worked out really well having that blind going on throughout team fights.
Really didn't. With how everybody on this side of Renegades could just run forward to an extent and cause problems for them. Set and Erlang Shen running at you, the worst case possibilities. And then you've still got to deal with the Terra that's going to be using the ultimate wherever possible, and the CC as well. Caused so many problems for LG to get anything going this game.
For me, a lot of times it was the other way around too. It's just Cherryo on this Erlang has such a dominating presence. There was really not a whole lot that Joshy could do anytime this Erlang showed up, even through the disapparate. Renegades just didn't care. They chose to dive, and they made sure that Joshy would fall, and if not more, it just never really had a true team fighting instance there for Luminosity, because someone was always picked off. And it's not to say their positioning was awful, it's just brute force here from Renegades.
By the time that right-hand Phoenix ended up falling down, I think LG had already been looking and turning their attention towards game number 4 here to see what they can do next. Nika on your screen had a very good performance on the set there. We've seen why it's getting bad now, Taco. You can see at the top level why set can be so good. In the average games, it's a very tricky god to play, but at the top level, you expect people to be able to play it out and make it work.
Look, there's a few gods in SMITE that we say the same things about from the analytical perspective every single time. Easy to learn, but
hard to master.
Difficult to master.
That's every god in SMITE, to be fair.
I don't know. I can't agree
there's one
with
or two
that.
more?
I think
okay, which one's easy to master? Ha, gotcha.
Easy to master? Are you talking about like just learning the kit, or
no? I mean like master the god. I think every god has
King Arthur.
Okay,
I don't think you have to do much there except slam your face into the keyboard.
I was going to say place nose on the 1 key and roll to the 4 key and then back again. Is that what it is?
Oh, you don't even have to go back again.
Just
chances
one way.
are you'll automatically do it if you just.
I was looking for a double kill. You'll roll one way, then you roll the other, and you got a double kill, right?
Triple,
Arthur?
Usually, actually, from my experience.
Go play it. Well, at least Variety was doing that at the start of the year. Let's get into picks and bans for game number 4 then, and see if Renegades will close this out against LG. And the way they played that last game, they look invigorated. I think they've turned on the heat a little bit more so, especially after how game 1 went.
Well, if they turn on the heat, I hope that they send it to the bathrooms, because we could use it over there as well. Jingwei going to be taken out first from the Renegades, though. They are persistent as ever on trying to keep these hunters away from Joshy. So if Jingwei is going to be banned first, then I'd have to expect that Chernobog would be the next go-to ban here for Renegades, because Joshy has struggled a little bit ever since that Game 1 performance without the Chernobog.
They really feel like they have shut down Joshy quite a bit in terms of putting him on gods that he may not want to go with to begin with. Obviously, Jing and, of course, the Chernobog have been his 2 go-tos that worked out very well. Renegades making sure they're not available. LG did, by the way, Geb last game. I wonder if they'll look for it again this time round, or if future adjustments will be made. I'd actually like LG to maybe look at picking up Jormungandr for the solo lane, because Renegades have banned it every game so far in the counter ban phase to make sure that Xaliea couldn't get on it.
Yes, a much earlier pickup of that Jormungandr, I think, would go extremely well for Luminosity. Not only that, but I think that they can stay with banning the Geb. I think they should at least stick to banning that Geb away from iRaffer. But in that third pick ban, take away the set, not the Kumbhakarna, because that was the big adjustment that I noticed with Luminosity. They chose to go with that Kumbhakarna instead of banning away the set like Renegades had been doing for the first 2 matches. Nija actually going to be the god ban of choice. Luminosity may be feeling as though Renegades are looking for a switch up here.
Definitely would. When we look at the player cams there, you can see Renegades quite animated, talking amongst themselves, everybody getting involved. LG, though, look very quiet on that side. A lot of listening going on, but not a whole lot of talking, just a lot of sullen silence, which is never a good sign in my eyes.
Well, to be completely fair in that regard, you have to remember, Game 2, a little bit of pushback from Luminosity, but ultimately Renegades were able to just run them down. Game 3, basically a repeat of Game 2, except at an expedited process of a pace, because Luminosity, from the very start, it seemed, were under pressure from the Renegades, and so Lasbra maybe even trying and shift the direction here from Luminosity instead of being more of this mid-game team fight aspect to a little bit more of that early game. Where's the Pele? I think that could be a really good switch up for Luminosity here.
Could be a good point. How are you feeling about Lasbra now in the jungle this year? He started off in the mid lane, transitioned to the jungle. Has he started to show what he showed us on Insignum last year?
Yes, it just took a little bit of time, and I think even now he's still not truly all the way to that Insignum form that we last saw him at.
Yeah.
I mean, even then he can begin to build better off of that, but it's always going to take time. I mean, he had to spend all of Phase 1 practicing for a role that wasn't even his specialty.
That's a good point, and now he finds himself back in the jungle again. But he seems to be working out a lot better than he did earlier on. Isis is available, and I was wondering if Renegades did have this in their god pool, because they banned it a lot themselves. But with the Zhong ban from Renegades, it left Isis on the table. LG were more worried about the Erlang Shen. So the lady will slip through as a first pick option.
I kind of want to see a set Pele here from Luminosity, just full-on aggro force power here to try and punish this Isis, because Isis loves to control the early game, especially at that level 1 clear potential with the Wing Gust of the mid lane, and if she's shut down early on, it can be really difficult to recover, because that is her most abusable factor, is just trying to take over early.
I'll just say, trying to play a solo laner in the SPL must be the weirdest thing through the years, because you've had to play mages, guardians, warriors, assassins. You really have to...
We have seen hunters.
The only thing they don't do is hunters, right? I mean, early days we saw 1 or 2 over there in the Apollos.
I think Season 3 was the last time we really saw any sort of hunter play.
You really have to have quite a deep god pool to be able to play multiple different roles if that set is going to the solo lane there. It'll be Xaliea up against, well, Xaliea set potentially up against the King Arthur that Nika's going to run back again.
I would actually like to see this set for Lasbra and a Jormungandr pickup still for Luminosity, because Jorm Geb as a frontline prospect here for LG could be exactly what Snoopy and Joshy need in terms of relief for Peel.
Well, CC is pretty good so far from Renegades with the Isis and Terra to try and shut down of what Set's going to try and do, although Eonic will be piloting the Geb more than likely with those shields to help out a little bit more. So I wonder if they do go for the Jormungandr here then, or they look elsewhere.
If they don't go for the Jormungandr, then Renegades could possibly look to ban it away again in case they don't really feel convinced that the set is for Xaliea. I'm not convinced that the set is for Xaliea just yet either, because you have to remember, once upon a time ago, Snoopy was playing set in that dual lane position. There is a chance, I think, that he could run it in mid.
Against an Isis?
Against an Isis.
I'm not sure how that would work out.
Early game clear, probably for the Isis, but as soon as Set gets a couple of items online, he should be able to just run her down.
I'm definitely looking at the 2v2 in mid as well, because if the supports do go towards the mid lane at the beginning of the game, Terra and Isis are definitely going to have wave clear over Geb and Set in those early stages. Kronos locked in, and realistically with how Kronos' wave clear will go, that will be for the dual lane and Joshy, which is going to be something that Funballer will have to deal with more than likely here. Cabrakan banned away by Renegades. They don't necessarily believe, Taco, that Set is going to be in the jungle then, with the fact Cabrakan's banned.
Maybe an Amir ban even, in case Cherryo might be looking for some walls to cut off that Geb or the Kronos, force out some rewind. Bots, though, going to be the focus instead. And It's just the AoE presence that Luminosity are trying to force Renegades off of right now, which makes sense. They've got Terra, the King Arthur, Isis, a lot of circle builds to kind of work off of in that team fight. So choke points are not going to be Luminosity's specialty here, and Renegades maybe even a little suspectful of the Pele because of the fact that Luminosity has so much late game dependency right now in their draft.
So they do need something early game focused maybe from Luminosity here. They're up with the next pick now. It'll give us a bit more of an idea of where the Chronos and Set will be going. Ho-Yi locked in. That's definitely a Snoopy god for sure. So it definitely indicates to me Snoopy should be piloting that in the mid lane.
And my favorite part about Luminosity right now is the fact that Snoopy and Joshy are so interchangeable with their god pick choices. But Ratatoskr can definitely pose a pretty big threat to this Ho-Yi. Dive Bomb sometimes can be kind of tough to get off through the Cosmos.
Also very good just to give that aerial vision of what's going on too. Xbalanque, the final pick from Renegades, going back to it again. This time though, it does ask a question, is Dardez going to be taking the Xbalanque mid again this game? More than likely it should be Isis.
It's a risk that Renegades could go for, but I think that I would definitely prefer to see this Isis on Dardez. But after seeing the Xbalanque in Game 3, I wouldn't put it past Renegades to try and flex opt for this Isis and Shabal.
Arachne, the last pick. Now that could flex to the solo lane or jungle still, so we'll see if Lasbra or Xaliea will be piloting that. As people have been mentioning, Arachne, the best god in the game technically in terms of the highest win rate, wins the most of the games that they played in any single format, not just Conquest, but everything.
Well, Luminosity looking to try and even up the score and bring this to a game 5 here. And while I think they've got a chance, Hindu, my main concern is these last couple of games for Renegades, they've been closing out around that 25-minute mark or less, and now Luminosity are trying to make this game stretch out to that 30-plus minute territory, and I'm just not sure how feasible that's going to be against a lot of that early game pressure that Renegades has opted for.
Yeah, LG's composition here. I'm a little bit worried about the fact that they're going to be all over the place, a bit discombobulated trying to get in and out of combat. Their front line isn't really there. Geb's the only real hard front line that they have, unless we see the Arachne go for a bit more of a tankier build. Same for Set, maybe.
Some gross bursts, though, for sure.
Well, let's find out if Renegades can close this one out, or will Luminosity answer back once more and tie us up? It's John Finch and Anatoly.
Thanks, Hindu. Thanks, Taco. Game number 4 could potentially be our final game of the set. It is me and Anatoly here. And, of course, Doug bringing you all the lovely views. But I am also worried. I share the desk concerns, Taco, or Tolly, excuse me, about this early game focus for Renegades that LG just don't have. And Renegades can transition pretty nicely to the late game with the Xbalanque.
They could, but that's really the only late game I'm super worried about is the Xbalanque, whereas LG have more answers to that late game. But it's going to be up to Lasbra to enable them to even make it through the early game. This Arachne is such a staple, snowball-y kind of character to find the isolated picks, chase them down once that Hasting Katana is completed. But Renegades, they've been looking so strong this set, Finch, after losing game 1. I think they just got mad.
Yeah, I did. Felt like that too. I'm actually a bit surprised they gave Funballer the Isis. I thought there'd be a lot of potential for Cherryo to play around this Isis if it was the Isis for Dardez there and they had Rat Isis, sort of that mid-jungle combination. But this might actually give LG a little bit more time if the Isis is kind of relegated to the long lane and instead it's the Xbalanque in that spot. Ho-Yi's Sunbreaker feels like a better tool early to mid than Xbalanque's got.
2 reasons why Renegades did that between the Isis and the Xbalanque. Number 1, like you mentioned, Funballer on the Isis wants the levels, as Isis is more favorable on the levels. Number 2 is with more action in the mid lane, Dardez is more just easier to build the stacks of the passive to get the extra 5 power for every 1500 damage.
That's a good point. He's just going to straight up have more people to swing at to try and build that power up if he plays here in the middle lane, and it does give them the Hunter v Hunter here in the middle up against the Ho-Yi for Snoopy. But I think that we do all uniformly agree that if this game goes like 30 minutes or something like that, then it's pretty hard to beat Chronos, Geb, Arachne Set with a Ho-Yi in there for good measure. So if LG can kind of hold on and bide their time, at least on paper, they've got a real good shot.
Forgot to mention the Geb in that equation as well. That's going to be a good factor to keep everyone alive of those squishy characters. Snoopy controlling a lot of space on the Ho-Yi with the Suns. Makes it hard, I think, for Cherryo to find the right opportunity to dive in. But with Raffer's Earth and Furies, I think it'll become a lot easier once he gets the blink.
And remember, early on in game number 3, they went for that attempt on iRaffer's life on this very same Terra pick. Now, they don't have, you know, the Across the Sky and some of those other tools they were using to catch up to him quickly, but they're going to need to make sure they execute it. A lot of their abilities are off the mark for that gank. If they want to go for him again, they got to make sure they're hitting them.
Eonic was looking for that blink opportunity to see what he can do. A little bit of a knock-up onto Dardez. Does force the shell from iRaffer, but no beats from Dardez. Great patience out of the Hunter.
That was good for him to hold on to those, but the shell coming out from iRaffer is still a nice win for LG if they can look for another setup. A bit surprised it's Eonic still being as aggressive as he was on the Horus, despite being on the Geb here this time, but I like him on the Geb. I think this is his best pick right now, what he's looked the best on from what we've seen from him so far. So getting him back to that comfort zone should help.
And finally picking it, right? Like, they had so many opportunities to first pick it for themselves.
Yeah, plus iRaffer doesn't have it.
Right,
yeah.
That's another thing, right? Like, you're banning away so many iRaffer focuses with between the Khepri, the Kumbhakarna last game as well. It was just so weird to see that coming through. Also, yeah, like, banning away those gods and still getting Terra makes Renegades just laugh at you when they were able to do whatever they pleased between the red buff invades.
And they were still able to do things like get the Erlang Shen, you know, and a lot of other these picks that they've liked. So LG have made some good adjustments, I think, here with this draft this time. And the real person that I'm following is going to be Renegades with Cherryo on this Ratatoskr. And what does he do with that very first Through the Cosmos, that very first ultimate from him? I always talk about how important that cooldown is. You pick Rat a lot of the time because he gets you that early pressure for sure, almost for free. We'll see if Cherryo can find it.
It's because you never have to back to base to finish off the Acorn, sitting at a
pretty sweet.
Decent experience lead per minute over Lasbra, despite neither of them hitting level 5 quite yet. I'm expecting Cherryo to hit level 5 off this camp potentially. I might look for a play. I'm thinking maybe in the long lane, but Joshy is level 5 for the rewind.
He doesn't have to worry about the rewind and also the purification beads. There's the Geb shield out from Eonic early, so Cherryo can't find much more on the back end, and so he will retreat. But now all of LG kind of have to have their heads on a swivel for this Rat ult.
I like the fact that Cherryo doesn't invest a dash there. He could have been in a lot of trouble, so instead tries to just walk up for the stun. Didn't have the range, I think, to connect all 3 Acorns to apply the stun. The Snoopy realizes he just wants to back now to get a power spike, expends the ultimate to clear the mid wave.
And that should give them right side mid heartbeat control, at least for now. Lasbra there on this Arachne. And we haven't talked much about this Arachne for Lasbra. Arachnes kind of like to stay in the jungle for a while, it feels like, at the beginning of the game, and get a few items online. And if you end up running into the Arachne in the jungle, then you're in a lot of trouble.
Especially once Golden Blade is completed. It makes it a lot easier to clear these jungle camps as Lasbra still struggling to play catch-up to Cherryo's Ratatoskr.
For a moment, I thought iRaffer stole it, but he did not.
No, definitely not. He might be in a lot of trouble now, though.
Dive Bomb comes in as well. There's that shell back up yet again. And now we're wondering if using the Sunbreaker to clear that mid wave was the right call. It might have set up for that kill there on iRaffer.
It definitely could have, but it might have just forced out the Earth and Fury. So I think that iRaffer might have still gotten out of that little bit of a scuffle, but still, despite all of that, I don't think LG can take advantage of the shell, but taking advantage of Xaliea was Cherryo, a little bit out of position there. No physical defense for the set soul laner, going for the health option. Instead, I like that idea to get the CDR.
I thought LG were going to consider this a red buff invade, but they don't have that same mentality that Renegades have had this set. Instead, they'll stand nearby and kind of let that one go. Not much for them to find there. So going back to this sort of Arachne discussion that we were having there before, when do you think you want to see Lasbra start to make some plays with this?
It can't be yet. I think he has to be looking for the counter ganks.
Sure.
Expect where Cherryo is going to go and then play cleanup crew, because it's going to happen on the opposite end very easy, where if Lasbra forces fights on the left side, then Cherryo is going to play cleanup crew on the Through the Cosmos. So it's all about controlling vision from LG, waiting out that global, and just making it to the late game, relying on the strengths from Joshy and Snoopy. Lasbra just needs to hold down the fort to play cleanup crew if ganks do occur.
It does feel a lot riskier to go for ganks if you're the jungler against a Ratatoskr, because it's so easy for him to find that timing and then use an ultimate to rotate quickly to a fight. So I'm right there with you in terms of maybe Lasbra can just play it safe, farm in the jungle for now and wait. I mean, if this game stays like this for the next 10 minutes, Luminosity is not complaining.
I agree. Because if Lasbra goes for the ganks and doesn't get anything out of it,
Yeah.
to sacrifice potential farm in the jungle, now all of a sudden Cherryo might have a 2 to 3 level lead on this Ratatasker. But we might see iRaffer root out Joshy, does force out the Geb shield. No harm, no foul.
So they'll take their time to back. Cherryo is going to be able to strip away a little bit of this farm here on the right-hand side, but nothing to the point of being worth writing home about. One more thing to zoom in on, though, is that Xaliea is on the set this time, which Nika played very, very well last game. Nika actually had a really good set, so I'm sure Xaliea would want some answer back. And look at this from Renegades. I don't know how they always seem to have this information. There are some deep wards, but there's no one really around for LG. They've got this Gold Fury being brought quite low. The Circle of Protection is huge contest. Joshy's nearby, but it's so hard to fight through that Circle of Protection.
But now he might be in a little bit of trouble. He does get the rewind off before landing, but still finding the opportunity.
And in comes Cherryo from the sky. First blood for Renegades, and they find themselves a Gold Fury. The only reason I wasn't saying they were more early focused was this Isis, but LG wants some blood. In comes Eonic with the Cataclysm, but it only lands on the Rapper. Shockwave is there too as Funballer's beads are forced out. A nice turnaround stun, and they're out. But Dardez, he can become the target.
No, in fact, he's going to turn around because the flank from Cherryo to play cleanup crew. The pincer out of Renegades, getting 2 additional picks after the fact. And Finch, I got to go all the way back in time as we're going to see probably Lasbra clean up Dardez. I got to go back in time to the back camp invade. Nothing to write home about, but that little invade forced LG to lean on the right side of the map. They rotated 3 players there to secure their blue buff, afraid that there was going to be additional contention on that jungle. There was a 2-level disparity. Lasbra was level 6, Cherryo was level 8. You have to enable that Arachne to play catch-up, and with that information of 3 players on the right, it gave Renegades all the time to confirm the Gold Fury on the left. And how are you going to steal it as Joshy's Chronos up against their Circle of Protection out of Funballer?
There's just no way, as long as it's timed correctly. And this is one more thing that I want to bring up, is that if the Ice had been in the middle lane, I wouldn't have been so willing to kind of talk about how Renegades might not be that far ahead in the early game. Isis can feel really strong because she has so many control tools and burst, and the Circle of Protection's nice. But as long as they can rotate Funballer over to the Gold Fury and still make some use of it, then yeah, Renegades can do some really big things here in the early game like we just saw. And now LG are on the back foot, having to try and find a way to just kind of tread water until they can get online.
I think that's 3 invades in a row that Cherryo was looking for. Not going to find it this time around. Trying to collapse on him just to not even kill him. You're not going to kill an elusive Ratatasker like this. You're just trying to spot out the vision and prevent him from being aggressive, but still confident enough to go in for a 1v2. This is the kind of confidence you need from your jungler, recognizing these opportunities.
And one word just dropped off, totally, but there's like a line across the LG side of the map of blue wards that Renegades put up. They're just now starting to fall away, but they have so much information about where LG are, when they're coming back from the base, when they're making their plays and their rotations, and I think that's what enabled them to be so aggressive.
Just look at that, Cherryo leading the wards place category at 6 from the jungle category.
Just goes to show how much they value that information. Cherryo drops down right into a Cataclysm, and there's the Sunbreaker on the choke point, and it's iRaffer that's caught in it. Joshy and the rest of LG finally find a clean kill, but that's only if Eonic can make it out. The Shockwave is there, but the branching bolas from Dardez make it 1-for-1.
Joshy needs to play cleanup crew. He has to accelerate going, get slowed out a little bit by the poison darts. Could be a turnaround. Spirit Ball barely off the mark. They're trading out support for support.
Yeah, Snoopy did the lean to get away from it like Keanu Reeves in the first Matrix, barely avoiding danger. Lasbra, that was ambitious. And Cherryo finds the stun that guarantees Lasbra's death. So yeah, what looked initially like a clean pick just turned into a 2-for-1.
Yeah, I think that Lasbra anticipated Joshy to play follow-up crew, and with the red buff up from Renegades, he didn't expect 3 red jerseys around that core of Oracles, but still a good opportunity to use the vision control that Renegades has. They knew that Lasbra was a little bit left alone and just abusing that fact. Still a 2-level lead for Cherryo.
And that's why those wards place was so important. Renegades just have more information, I think, than Luminosity do. And I think that was a good attempt to try and punish Renegades around this choke point right here that we're looking at on that left-hand side with that Sunbreaker there from Snoopy. But again, they weren't able to do it cleanly enough. and Renegades found a little bit back.
It's never fun to only use your ultimate as a Hui on one single target, especially if that's a support, but sometimes that's what you're called upon to do, to find any sort of advantage that you can, as Renegades were able to turn that right on its head, and they might even avoid the late game if Renegades can continue to play like this by grouping up and using their level lead.
Cherryo forces the dive bomb from Snoopy and can just continue his pathing. Eonic has rushed this Pride Wind right after those tank boots, and I feel like we don't see that as much nowadays, but Pride Wind can still feel really good right after you ult to give you that shield and the slow to maybe get you out of there. Do you like it rushed this early on the Geb?
I don't mind it because it's so hard to fit cooldown reduction into your build, so this basically enables that factor. You're not getting much of a shield from Pride Wind once you do blink Cataclysm, but it's a little bit there, about 80 to be exact.
You definitely don't want to undervalue it as Eonic being chased out by Renegades. And this aggression is because the next Fury is spawning. Oni Fury has just shown up, and now our solo laners are here. Nika has rotated in, but there's Eonic's Cataclysm and the Sunbreaker after it, but they just don't find much there at all. Lasbra on the retreat path, having used the Nightcrawler. Cherryo has made his way in with the Blink as well, and all of LG have to flee back to the Tier 1.
And this is the difference between that little stutter step of the stun versus not being forced to cancel out the rollout. Eonic was able to roll out without stopping. The range from Cherryo's stunned. Couldn't stop that escape, but it still maybe could allow Renegades to go for their second Fury.
Cherryo has bitten off a little bit too much, as now in comes Xaliea, but somehow Cherryo makes it up to the tree, and Snoopy ends up dropping. The Fury did end up getting leashed, so Renegades have not claimed that one, but so far they're 1-0 up in this fight.
Oh, Nika on the flank as well, keeping Joshy preoccupied. LG, though, they're on the chase, but they're getting kited and damaged at the same time.
And there's the circle of protection. It was all a bait. They had the big turnaround play. Funballer finds Eonic. Xaliea tries to get to the back line to remove Funballer, but there's too much peel. A killing spree for Cherryo as they come out 3-for-0.
You know, the saying, the rich get richer?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what Renegades is happening there, because that fight looked good for LG at first, up until Cherryo escaped through the Cosmos.
Yeah. Not
Not even landing back into the fight, but still making a presence at the very tail end of it. Enabling LG is like, oh, wait a second, Cherryo back, let's keep on going. And then as they're kiting, or as they're chasing rather, they're getting kited. Funballer's wing gusting backwards, not losing any movement speed and damaging. Dardez does a quick Does a quick 180 poison darts to get off more damage. And then Nika on the flank side is harassing Joshy while the front line of LG were already committed on the chase, couldn't peel for their hunter.
And yet another fight where the solo laners rotated over and Nika just had a much bigger impact than what Xaliea did in that fight. I mean, Xaliea was the one who it fell to, I think, to clean up that Ratatosker as Eonic is trying to lock down Cherryo, but Dardez is here throwing out those bolas the entire time. Snoopy steps forward into the Suns as Lasbra has been a bit caught out. Circle of Protection won't confirm, so Funballer's got to run.
A little bit of a damage check. Now more of a damage check onto Joshy. Forced to use the Aegis, was fearful of the Acorn Blast occurring. Snoopy not lucky enough there on the ricochet, but Xaliea might be in trouble.
He certainly is. He's forced to not only use beads, but to swap there with the clone and take the retreat path. Renegades still haven't gotten this second Fury, but now they're looking to start it up. Raffer's pulling it, but with no one nearby, he'll give up on that. Eonic has become the target here in the middle lane, and Snoopy can't save him. Another spill for LG.
Not even going to go for the Tier 1 tower, a bigger prize around the horizon. It's the form of the Oni Fury. Nika going to continue to zone on this side. Going to catch out Snoopy. His dive bomb is up, but the dive won't stop here.
It certainly will not. Snoopy can't even find the stun, and Nika gets yet another pick. Meanwhile, the Oni Fury goes down for the rest of Renegades. Nika almost lost his life, but a two-man knock-up into the King Arthur ultimate, and Nika's been able to reposition. He can't find quite enough sustain, so Xaliea at least makes it 1-for-1, but Dardez comes in and cleans him up.
Joshy now under his Tier 1 tower, having to defend it as long as possible for red jerseys. Eonic is back in with the Blink Cataclysm, knocks up Funballer, but Joshy, not enough damage to confirm the kill. Look at the flank, though, from Lasbra.
He does want to come in and find some of these low-health targets, but just how safe can he feel? Dardez able to make it to the CC immune portion of the ultimate and back to the safety of the Tier 1 tower, and Renegade still in firm control, up over 4K gold.
This performance from Nika, being able to survive that long
That's
1v2. That's King Arthur in a nutshell, honestly. And that's also because of how far behind Lasbra is, unfortunately, at level 13. He should have probably been a little bit higher level with more items to damage out Nika harder before that rotation from Cherryo was even possible to play defense.
We talked about this early on, that LG would be trying to hold on throughout this early to mid game until they can get their more late game focused composition online. And they're not entirely out of reach. 4,000 gold's not the end of the world, but look how far Snoopy is behind Dardez right now. He's the same level as iRaffer, actually below iRaffer at level 11 on this Hou-Yi. I mean, that's just not a good sign.
Definitely not looking good there for the Canadian Hunter player, as now taking over to level 12, will have access to the Aegis, needs that Executioner for the attack speed and the penetration, but on the opposite side, Dardez going for lifesteal in the form of the Aussie.
Nika is underneath the pressure of a gank, but Cherryo's on his way to even the numbers. He blinks in, holds the stun for now. Xaliea looks for the turnaround with the skewer, but there's the stun. He's forced up into the air, is Cherryo, and then right back down, but Xaliea with the skewer finds himself a double kill. Cherryo does get the kill posthumously, but the 2-for-1 there for Xaliea.
Archer's a little bit too strong. That should have been a clean 2-for-0 there. That skewer with about 7 or 8 clones coming through, that is the dream when you're playing set in the solo lane. Once you pop that Kingslayer, every 4th strike, you're applying a debuff on the enemy. That 4th strike enables another clone, you get a little bit of a bursty heal, the enemy takes additional damage. So Xaliea wants to last that long.
It almost worked out for them cleanly. It still worked out well, I would say, for them to be able to survive that gank. So Xaliea very much still in this game as Snoopy gets chunked by the Spirit Ball there from Funballer. This is a red buff invade from Renegades they're trying to make work, and Joshy wants to defend, but can't quite. Funballer drops the buff, but realizes he can't pick it up because he already has purple.
And great discipline from Funballer, by the way, because during the Wind Gust, he could have chased down Snoopy just to pop a circle of protection and probably get the kill. Without Aegis, Snoopy was probably dead to rights there, but there was a better priority where Renegades were like, all right, let's play clean, go for the red buff. And this is something that doesn't come through comps. You're not calling to like stop the dive from Funballer. This is just through practice and discipline that Renegades have been doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, those minutia type plays can't be communicated in comms effectively. So as you said, it just comes from reps, man. And that's something that I think that this Renegade squad has more than the LG squad as a collective unit in terms of playing together. And it's starting to show a little bit here as Renegades pull at the seams from LG, enjoying about a 5,000 gold lead as we approach that 20-minute mark. And I asked you about Eonic building the Pride Win earlier on, but with the Relic Dagger afterwards, he hasn't really improved that Pride Win at all. I know it's an item that's really popular now, but it doesn't quite synergize.
I'm just convinced that it doesn't even matter, honestly,
Sure.
like to get more protections for the shield health. It's nice to have it, but like the max cap for protections is 325 each. So the most you can get is a 650 health shield, but that's a heavy investment.
iRaffer has been caught by the Blink Cataclysm from Eonic, but he managed to make his way out. Immediately, Cherryo goes up into the sky and cleans up Joshy way in the back. Xaliea is looking for a cleanup kill of his own on the Dardez, but can't quite lock him down. The skewer eventually is able to get it there as Lasbra is cut down by Nika, and the rest of Renegades want to keep surging forward.
Sloppy play from Lasbra. He spent too much time trying to chase iRaffer, going to mid lane instead of going to where he was required on the opposite end. Sure, Dardez did die to Xalia's skewer, but it took longer than it probably should have, and then it put just Lasbra in a really awkward position.
Xalia's lurking to try and steal, but couldn't find the timing. I don't think he had any information on just how low it was. Because of that, he could not steal. Renegades come away with the Pyromancer and a 2-for-1 fight on the back end, now pushing that lead up to 6K.
It's looking really clean for Renegades. Not as clean in Game 3, the last one, because the game was
over.
over.
By now, yeah.
It was like not even 19 minutes into the game as they got that left side Phoenix off of a great split push. But we're still seeing a dominating performance from Cherryo on the Stratotasker. His god pool is just so diverse. It feels like it's impossible to even try to ban out.
He played Athena at the start of the set, right?
Yeah,
so,
he did.
And we're ending, or near ending, on Cherryo and this Stratotasker, so that just goes to show the breadth of his pool, right? Yeah.
It's insane. Like between the Naja as well, like Renegades have been doing a good job keeping his god pool very high there, as the Erlang Shen was in game number 3. So I think he's just played a different god in every game of this set.
Primal Fury will belong to Renegades, but it's not just Cherryo that's flexing the God pool. Remember, iRaffer had a bunch of gods banned from him and kind of forced down to this Terra, and he's looked perfect on it in the 2 games that he's played it. Xaliea, though, grabbing this tier 1 and right, might be the only saving grace for LG right now. Level 20, the highest in the game. They're going to need him to keep making plays.
Finch, I'm just convinced that at this point, it's impossible to ban out Renegades any longer.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
No target player can you ban out.
So instead, you must just try and ban away strategies as Cherryo does make it up to through the Cosmos and can indeed retreat safely. They grab that tier 1 tower. It's only the tier 1 in solo remaining for LG now to cling to, as Renegades still have 2. LG considering starting up the FG. They sent a couple shots that way, but no way they do it.
Cherryo is a little low. That's why they're going to go for it. Dardez, though, was CC immune during the Rising Jaguar.
And Snoopy's in trouble in the back. Nika's found him. Dive Bomb allows him to reposition, but Nika blinks in and finds him even through the ricochet. Eonic being chased down too as Lasbra can't find himself a target. Xaliea knows how much pressure's on him, but he's been stunned by the Spirit Ball. Eonic falls too to the double kill from Nika, and it's just Joshy left, and they're hunting him down as well. Renegades have taken firm control of this game.
They want the deicide, Finch. They're going to force the rewind coming through. Funballer gets the silence, misses the stun, but the chase is still going to be on. I don't think Renegades are going to force any Phoenixes off of this, but they're certainly going to get this Fire Giant.
Man, Renegades are such a strong team right now, and I know LG are not as strong as like Rival or some of the other teams, but they are not pushovers. Renegades making them look like they're struggling this much is more of a testament, I think, to Renegades' skills than any deficiencies there for LG. This is just a sign of how strong this team continues to be.
Oh, it really is, honestly, Finch. Like, beating out Splice after MSI, like, despite some of the changes of Baskin out, Solo Troll in, I think that's still a very solid roster to be able to win in 4 games and to continue the streak. Now, up against LG, it's a slow and steady build-up.
And these numbers have now reached that point where we often talk about any comebacks being more about mistakes from the winning team than from anything positive you can do on that defensive side. And with the Fire Giant to go push in, they're about to extend that lead even further because they did it without getting any tier 2s off the map.
They really have. And LG, like, despite the adaptations that they made through picks and bans, through their playstyle between Phase 1 and Phase 2, they need to clean up with who they focus and how they focus it, because there's been too much attention onto iRaffer. Where is the Eonic we saw in Phase 1, where he was harassing the enemy jungler to prevent him from being just comfortable? We haven't really seen that. Whereas Renegades, they're starting mid with an aggressive hunter to outpush you and then look for the red buff invades. That's been their win condition in most games.
It looks like LG were considering a trade. They will get this tier 2 tower, but at this point, the push on Renegades is too fast. They have to back and be here to at least try and defend these Phoenixes. There's no way they can just afford to trade a Phoenix at this point.
I don't know, honestly. If I'm LG, I'm keeping at least Joshy there to split push the right side. There was a wave right beside him, and with the Chronos level 19, that would have been a quick Phoenix to have.
Interesting point there, Totally. I think I might see some merit there, too. As Cherryo wants to keep things going.
Now he's dead.
Joshy's already removed. The left side Phoenix has been melted as well as Snoopy buckles under the pressure. Eonic means a double kill now for Nika. Suddenly, it's just Lasbra and Xaliea on these 2 assassins to try and keep this game going. And Renegades have decided they're just going to move into the Titan room here, Totally. They want to put LG to bed. Titan at half HP. Xaliea goes to the back line to try and shut down these damage dealers, so they just turn and start the burn. Lasbra melts, so does Xaliea, and that does it. Renegades take the set over LG.
The little brother won game number 1, Finch, but couldn't win 2 more in a row afterwards. I'm really convinced that Joshy should have split push and that end because his beats were still down for about 20 seconds when he died. I believe Renegades were fully aware of that, and they took advantage. Cherryo landing on top of the Chronos, couldn't even get off the rewind.
Yeah, you make a great point there, because we saw how the other line worked out, and it sure didn't, right? So maybe there's a chance that if he goes back for the Phoenix, he can pull a couple of members of Renegades back, at least one, to try and defend the base, and then maybe Renegade or LG can hold on to the game a little bit longer. But it kind of felt like things were inevitable at that point. They were already down so much experience and so much gold. Renegade's just the better team today.
I still think that LG could take a lot from this set after this loss. The fact that they won game number 1 in such a turnaround fashion. got to be a confidence booster.
I would say so, man. Not a lot of teams have even been able to get a win off of Renegades. Remember, their run at MSI wasn't just without a set loss, it was without an individual game loss. So at this point, beating Renegades even once is definitely still a badge you can wear, but clearly a little bit more for LG to work on. We'll have the breakdown and the post-game on the other side of this break.
Skillshot, the official production partner of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the SMITE Pro League, and yes, Renegades took on LG today. LG, though, sure, Renegades did find the win, but LG did put on a bit of a performance to at least give them a scrap in this 3-1 victory for Renegades. Tackle, let's break that down as a whole set overall. How are we feeling about LG's performance today up against the Renegades?
I think Luminosity can still be satisfied with what they were able to accomplish here, because just as Finch alluded to in that post-game of Game 4, it's incredible that Renegades would even drop a single match here after such a phenomenal performance run at MSI. And I know that this isn't MSI and a little bit of time has taken place since then, but Luminosity realistically has not had that much time together as this new roster to play, much less against the caliber of the teams that they're having to go against already so early on.
There's a scary moment then that LG may start to turn things around towards the end of this play if they can, if they keep going at it like this. But in this game specifically against Renegades, it was all Renegades from minute 1 onwards. First blood goes over to Cherryo with the gank there, and this looked like an angry Renegades of sorts after that first game loss.
They're not used to having any sort of points affected in the standings, and while I'm certain that this won't put too much of a damper on Renegades positioning, it's still a message being sent, I think, to not just the Renegades, but every single team right now in that top 6 category, because I wouldn't even view Luminosity as a team that's prone to just playing spoiler right now for these other teams, as much as I would view them as a possible threat to their actual positioning in the standings.
And I think that's a good way of looking at it too. I think the top 8 teams in the Pro League now are really vying for one of those bigger spots higher up the table. Sure, the bottom 2 teams, which I still couldn't call just yet of where everyone's going to end up. This is a very tight league in Phase 2.
Cherryo as well, though, on this Ratatoskr performance, kind of zoning back in to this Game 4 performance. It was really just so dominating, and that's kind of the same word we've been having to use for the past 3 games right now, which goes along with our whole theme that Renegades were just not happy about dropping that Game 1 to Luminosity. They know that Lumi just came out and punished them for their misplays in Game 1, and that was a large part of the reason why they were able to take that game away from the Renegades, but Renegades not looking to sacrifice any more possibilities here. And the fact that they just kind of steamrolled over LG for those past 3 games, I mean, that's part of the scariness that is Renegades right now.
Does show a little bit, though, that Renegades may struggle at the start of the game, though. If you get an opportunity, you could try and run with it a little bit, but Renegades answered back so quick in Game 2. And from there, well, the nails were starting to fill into the coffin. Renegades are standing by, though. It's Funballer and Nika to break down what they thought about that performance.
Thanks, Hindu and Taco on the desk. I am indeed here with Funball and with Nika. The first thing I want to ask you all about that stands out to my mind after congratulations on the win was that Game 3, man. I mean, it was over so quickly. It was such a stomp. Talk to me guys a little bit, I guess, about what happened. How'd you all get so far ahead in that game?
It was just that Phoenix push. That's game 3, right?
I think so, yeah.
It was so random. Like, first they were like, yeah, keep him there, we'll get tower. Oh, I guess we'll get tier 2. Oh, I guess we'll get Phoenix. So it kind of just snowballed from there. Like, as soon as we got Phoenix, then we went to Fire because they had to defend left, and it's just how it was over, really. Not much else.
And Funballer, what's it like for you when you play up against LG? Because LG really like to focus the long lane, it feels like. Lasbra's over there a lot of the time, so you're always under pressure. And I guess just what it's like for you when you're playing against this LG team in that lane.
I mean, last year I had to play 1v2 because my support was always in mid. So, I don't know, I'm used to 1v2. And if you have like the correct vision and Cherryo has the mindset of always trying to follow the jungler. And I pretty much know where the jungler is, so it's easy for me.
It feels like against every single team, you guys have a very different style going into this. Is this true? And how have you prepared for LG? Because they look stronger in my eyes. Do you guys agree?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, they obviously beat United. They had a decent set against SK yesterday as well, and Dig.
They definitely felt like they had a lot more presence.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But we just like played our own game. We knew that as long as we didn't mess up, like game 1 we messed up really badly, I'd say. But then after that, we just full focus, no trolling from Fumble.
Yeah, for fun. That's what the blame is.
And then we just played our game and won that way.
Well, and does it make it easier for you all that, I mean, like you have some games where they spend the whole first ban phase trying to ban iRaffer, and then he still gets to play a monster Terra game. I mean, talk to me about, I guess, his presence and how much he does for the team as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to waste all their bans, then sure. I mean, Splice tried to do the same and it didn't work, so I thought maybe they try and target someone else, but I mean, we don't have a problem. Like, Raffer's gonna play whatever.
Yeah, his god pool's big enough. He'll probably whip out like an Ubis or something.
Yeah, like we're still getting like the strongest picks we can get.
Yeah.
Not an issue for us.
So how are you guys feeling about your next set? What are your expectations going in?
Well, we have a really long break, so I think it's SK and Rival we play in the same week. So really important sets, obviously. I think if we win both, or even against SK, I think we're guaranteed top 6. So just going to focus on winning at least one of them, and we should be good.
Well, again, congratulations on the big win. That was a pretty convincing performance there today. We're going to take a quick break. We got one more set coming up after this.